with the Freedom of Information Act. The first item on today's agenda is a special presentation from Joe Owens with Burr and Foreman, and he is here to talk through the possibility of a potential pilot program dealing with sandbags on the two ends of our island. So, Joe, if you don't mind,
Yes.
yeah, if you could just take a seat here and be sure to talk into the microphone. And yeah, pull that toward you.
Is that good?
Yep.
Hey, everybody. I think I've met some of you. Joe Owens, Burr Foreman, do a lot of beachfront permitting work in a variety of jurisdictions. Stephen Goldfinch and I would serve as co-counsel for this pilot program. Effectively, we represent several IOP HOAs, Beechwood, Seascape, and all of whom have existing geotextile sandbags. The proposal we're talking about right now would be a pilot project. We've got the renourishment coming, and the consensus from a lot of our other clients and from other people we've talked to is that people do not want to remove the bags. The only way to legally leave the bags in and form a core dune system in tandem with the renourishment would be to seek and apply for and obtain a pilot project permit from DES, Bureau of Coastal Management. BCM promulgated pilot project regulations a couple years ago. There's provisions in the statute, the Beachfront Management Act, that have allowed pilot projects in the past. They were very broad in scope. What BCM did a couple years ago was codify an actual pilot project procedure. It's a detailed procedure set forth in Regulation 30-13, and it effectively requires a whole bunch of stuff for application to be submitted: design, study, parameters, et cetera, anticipated outcomes. With me here is Stephen Tranum, CSC. I think you guys, most of you know Stephen. CSC has Stephen has a presentation that would talk through the mechanics of how the project would work, what application materials would need to be submitted, the benefits of the proposal, and the big one being effectively the cost benefit proposal. From effectively, if we're successful in getting a pilot project approved, it would allow us to form a core dune system. So Stephen Goldfinch and I served as co-counsel for a similar pilot project in Debido. Same bags, but it was not on this scale. And it was individual properties rather than a continuous dune, which this would be. And we got that permit approved probably three and a half years ago now. That was before these pilot project regulations were promulgated and made much more detailed. So effectively, the way it would work is third-party consultant engineer would handle the permit application. It would submit the permit application to BCM and for approval. Core dunes are used around the country. They're not permitted yet in South Carolina. So Florida is a great example. They have a very detailed geotextile, geotube, core dune statute that allows these projects to move forward. These projects are allowed in probably 10 or more other states around the country, and including on the East Coast. This would be like a core dune geotube type project, except using the existing bags that are already out there and potentially analyzing whether they need to be resituated or moved or whatever. He can get into that. Stephen can get into that. But effectively, the takeaway on the pilot project regulation now is that if the study is done, if the science and the study determines that there's a positive outcome, then that technology can be permitted and used by the department, by BCM moving forward. So that would be the ultimate goal. In tandem with the renourishment, come in, cover the bags, build dunes on top of them, vegetate them, analyze them through a storm cycle, see how they function, see what happens, submit all that data to BCM once the project's gone through certain timelines, and then try and get the bags approved for use on a going forward basis. Stephen has a presentation, and I'll answer questions after he does that.
Yes, just be sure that Mike is that Mike?
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And Josh, I'm not sure if this is plugged up or not, but I may just ask you for next slide if that works. But I'm going to go through this really quickly because I think you're pretty familiar with sandbags and what they do. So I'll try not to much of the agenda time here, but stop me at any point if you have any questions. You're very familiar with management options that have been discussed for a long time here. We're currently looking at a nourishment project coming up. We've recently done a shovel project. There's an alternatives analysis being done right now to look at structures, and we've certainly been dealing with a lot of emergency measures. One thing that will come up with this is chronic erosion versus episodic erosion. Chronic erosion is when you have a straight beach that just constantly kind of moves landward at a rate that is pretty steady, and maybe it's a foot per year, maybe it's 10 feet per year. But it's just ongoing erosion. Episodic erosion is what we deal with near the inlets where shoals, sometimes they're adding sand to the beach, sometimes you're getting a lot of erosion, so it comes and goes. Next slide, please. And this core dune system could work in either of those in a different way. At Isle of Palms for a long time. If you go back before the 2007 condition, which is shown here up in Wild Dunes, there used to be the 1 gallon bags that got everywhere. Then they moved to a 1 cubic yard bag that was not UV protected. Those deteriorated pretty quickly, and now we're looking at a more of a geotextile bag that holds up a lot better. They performed a lot better, but they're still not perfect. Up would be a geotube, which is a much larger geotextile bag that may be 100 feet long, maybe 6 to 8 feet tall. We're not really looking at that right now, but that would be another option. Next slide, please. So the general approach to this pilot project, we really need to focus on the framework of it. Like, what are we actually trying to accomplish and study? The core dune system itself has been around for a long time. It's nothing unique or new. Basically, it's a buried structure that becomes exposed either through a big storm event. A storm event will take sand off the dune. Whatever that structure is that's buried is exposed and does the protection. And then after that event, sand is either naturally or manually placed back over the structure. That really applies when you have chronic erosion or a stable beach. When you have episodic erosion, like at the inlets, you would have periods of time that may stretch for a year or two or more where the structure is exposed and functioning, and then whether it's nature or nourishment, then it gets buried again. So there's kind of a short-term storm impact approach and then a long-term. But what the pilot program requires is a study design where you're trying to decide what question are you answering. Are you answering how well will a specific size system protect structures either during a storm or one of these episodic erosion events? Or are you also looking at how well does the permittee manage the system while it's there? Are you burying the bags when they should be buried? Are they maintaining the level of protection that they need? For sea turtles and things like that. So there's kind of a management aspect of the study as well as a physics aspect. I think the way that this needs to be approached would be, is this a beneficial alternative to other emergency measures that are currently there? This is not to say that this is the only solution, but is this better than removing sand? And what's the long-term environmental impact? What's the long-term economic impact? You'd have to look at as far as the design, how far away from structures are the bag, how tall are they, how deep do you bury them, how Much sand is placed over the top of them. How can access either over or around them? So a lot of different aspects there. Next slide, please. But the general goal would be trying to avoid these critically eroded conditions where structures are actually threatened. Standardized protection levels so that you have consistent protection from one spot to another. And Beechwood is a great example where you have revetments on either side of Beechwood and Dune Crest. At Seagrove, there's a revetment. At Beach Club Villas, there's a revetment. And then there's an unprotected gap in the middle. So this would kind of serve as a structural continuation of those stone revetments to standardize protection. With these types of structures in place, it may allow a community to prolong, either weather a episodic erosion event or prolong a nourishment project because, the properties will be protected. Again, that's not we have a healthy dune system, but it's a kind of worst case emergency protection measure. So what it would do if this wasn't in place, we would likely eliminate the need for beach scraping, except after a hurricane, you would still use scraping to bury the structures. It would be more proactive in having protection in place and not having to wait till the water line was 20 feet from the house to have that structure in place. And it avoids the need to pay to actually remove the bags that are there. One of the issues when we were having to place bags is you have to place them on top of the existing sand. And if the beach continues to erode, those bags settle down into the sand as the beach erodes under them. Right now, there's a very good foundation of bags, especially up at the Beechwood area and the very eastern end of Wild Dunes near the golf course. So using that foundation helps reduce the amount of bags you may need in the future if it's still there. Next slide. Some examples of core dunes being constructed on the left, and then one that was exposed after a storm on the right. These are geotubes, not sandbags, but it's a very similar concept, just different material. Next slide. Similar thing of a geotube system being installed as a core dune. Some of the things that you have to kind of consider when you're looking at the integrity of the structure and just the overall impacts of it. Do you have movement of the structure over time as it's exposed to water? Can the material tear, be exposed from the sun and just UV damage, vandalize? That can happen where people will come and cut bags occasionally. So those are kind of the physical things. Sea turtle nesting, certainly we would permanent sense that would impact with the turtle folks to make sure that they're at a depth where that wouldn't occur. How do they impact dune growth or physical growth of sand or vegetation on the dune? And that's one of the things being studied at Debadoo. And then just public access to the beach over the structures. Next slide. So as Joe mentioned, there was a very right of the pilot project regulations, and I know this is real small to see, but there's about 10 different aspects that have a study design and a purpose that would be part of the application. You have to have control sites, identify the methodology, what are the questions you're actually trying to answer, how are you going to accomplish that? Developing a monitoring plan would be another deliverable. And then you actually have to do the permit application, and then a final report would be due at the end of the study period. And that study period for a project like this may be 10 years, depending on how long the bag may be buried. Next slide. Again, just kind of listing all the regulations there. It's pretty extensive, but nothing too complex. One of the kind of key criteria is the installation of new erosion control structures or devices as part of a pilot project will not be permitted. Sandbags in this sense are not erosion control structures or devices. They're emergency protection measures. But that's some of the kind of legal work that we have to get around as we kind of formulate the project. Next slide. And again, just more code there. those are the standards for the conditions that will apply to the pilot project. And Joe can go through those in detail if we need to. And one more, we'll skip through that. So that just discusses the final report requirements. So the implementation plan would be to develop a study plan, which will be the design, the environmental review, and the monitoring plan. The design would look at what level of protection are you looking for and how much sand that would require to bury the dune. Once all that's worked out, the permit application would go out. There's a public notice period, an agency review, and potential community outreach. The final design would look at surveys and select a contractor to do the work and monitor it after that. One of the things with this, as Joe mentioned, is right now some of the bags are not in the ideal configuration for protection. They've slumped. They've kind of served their purpose. But if you're doing a actual kind of core dune, you would want to either look at supplementing what's currently there, reconfiguring or redesigning, just to ensure that what's there, if it should become exposed in the future, is designed to actually offer the protection that we're looking for. Next slide. A couple of questions to answer. Would this be pre or post nourishment? The bags are kind of already there, so it would be doing the additional work before or after the nourishment's built. Where would the project limits be? Or are we talking about all the bags in a certain area where we would look to leave them buried? What would the permit conditions and monitoring requirements be? How often do you have to survey it? And what would those look like? And do we need third-party review or research? That's something that used to be in the criteria in the code and has been eliminated, where you don't have to have a unit, but you do have to put together the monitoring and have a final report. Next slide. I think this is the last one. So what would you actually need? Again, the design study with those elements that were identified in the code, that would be submit or be part of the permit application. The monitoring plan would be kind of negotiated with the state. We would recommend a plan to address the questions that we're trying to answer. Again, is it a management of the system? Is it the performance of the system? It's probably a combination of both. The actual permit application and the final report. A ballpark for the engineering part of that is probably 100 to 150K to put together those things, depending on how much support would be needed after the application is actually submitted. This would be the first project permitted by the state under this new program. So I can foresee there being a decent amount of coordination, review, and additional kind of effort that would need to be put into this. Just as without surveying the existing bags in, I would assume at least at the Beechwood area, we would need another 500 to 1,000 additional bags to build that structure back up to kind of a substantial protective revetment. The Ocean Club building would certainly need a decent amount more because they are lacking as well. So there would be a cost for that to kind of get the foundation of the bags in place. 400 to 500, yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it for my slides, and I'll turn it back over to Joe.
Can I ask one question for you? What's the timing? What's the timing? Because we're up against the nourishment start here.
We are, yes. Nourishment is still anticipated to start sometime around June. With nourishment schedules, again, that may end up pushing into July, but I talked to Marinex yesterday, and they are eager to go and kind of prepping for that. So I think we'll be pretty close to on time. The initial part would be a pretty hard push to try to get that stuff together within several weeks to, maybe a month to get that application submitted. My hope is that there would be a public notice period that would either be 15 to 30 days. I'm not sure what that timeline is for the state. So, we're looking at a couple of months to have that permit in hand, and Joe may have a better number on this, but I would hope that the state would be willing to allow a temporary reprieve to keep the sandbags in place and potentially buried while it was being worked out. And if for whatever reason that permit didn't come through, then they could be removed afterwards. That would be a hope,
You would
but
have to dig the sand up, put the bags, then put new sand back on. Even
the
possible.
current permit requires the city to remove the bags. It is a city permit, and y'all are required to remove the bags once the emergency pressure is no longer present. And that material the sand from the bags would be emptied on the beach because it is beach compatible, and the material would be hauled off. If we were in kind of that limbo on whether they could stay or not, we could either bury the bags. I'm speaking for the state giving us permission that we don't have yet. And then if we had to remove them, yes, you would have to move that sand, dig the bags out, empty it, and put that sand back. In theory, you could stockpile sand just seaward of the bag area and while this was kind of going on. And if we had permission, then bury them. If not, remove them and then use that sand to fill the void. So there are some logistical things that could be done with that. None of them they're all easy, but they're time consuming and
Are you just anticipating this to be the Beechwood East area?
that's kind of up for discussion
Is it
right
the
now.
South end, is it in front of Ocean Club?
It could be anywhere. I think that's, Joe, do you want to?
I think it depends on the analysis. I think the engineers would go survey on site, determine where it makes sense to do it, and make a determination based on their analysis.
Where, I think the first question is, where is this coming from? Well, I mean, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the beach for a long time and beach renourishment and sandbags. And all of a sudden I'm looking at 2 different engagement letters with law firms that they're thanking us for engaging them. Like when did this start? Where did this come from? Who started this process? Why are we here?
My understanding is that we have not been engaged, neither Stephen Goldfinch or my firm. It would be determined by council or this committee to engage us and move forward with the project. So no costs have been incurred.
But how did we get here today? Like what?
Through feedback that people that see, like our clients, for instance, and others we've talked to, don't want to remove bags, and the only solution to allow the bags to stay in tandem with the renourishment would be to complete a pilot project.
My understanding from the letter was that there was engagement from some of the people that lived around Beechwood East, right?
We represent Seascape,
Right.
the Beechwood folks
Uh-huh.
separately, but not as it relates to a pilot project.
But these
Would
sandbags are.
it be in order to make a motion to reorder the agenda right now and consider item number 11 under old business? I'm sorry, under new business, discussion consideration of the BCM pilot program? Just move
Yes.
that up.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I think Katie's answered Katie's question, or you asked the question. about
We
how
can
did
answer
how
the
did we
question
get here?
afterwards, can't we?
Well, she asked the question, I think would be good to have an answer. How did this all come about? Douglas, maybe.
Motion still stands.
The
I mean, I think
letters were addressed to you.
it all feels premature. I don't know why. I don't know how we could possibly be sitting here discussing this with 2 people that seem to know what's going on and the rest of us, and they're addressed to Douglas. It sounds like there's been a lot going on that the rest of us don't know about, and have this just thrown out here and thrown on us with, this is a blindside, like incredible blindside.
So
So-
I think we're discussing it right now, so we got a motion on
All
the
right.
floor.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
sure. Second. So,
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
So I will just answer from my perspective. I think Stephen Goldfinch reached out to the mayor and requested a meeting with us and it was Joe, the mayor, Stephen Goldfinch, myself. This discussion basically happened there. It was made clear that for the city to cooperate in this or to participate in this meeting would need to happen. Some meeting would need to happen where council would authorize any expenditure or any kind of change in our path forward. So that's what gets us to this point. I do think there was a sense of timing urgency. I mean, it would be towards the front end that we would start removing the bags. So if this was something that the city wanted to consider doing, it is time sensitive. We'd need to know that and start on that as soon as possible, because removal of the bags would happen quickly towards the beginning of the project.
I think
So it was an idea that, and I don't know how it got from Goldfinch to the mayor. I don't know, other than just him being involved with those property owners and probably being responsive to those owners. I'm guessing that was the impetus for the call to the mayor.
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, for doing your presentation, but it seems like we've got an undefined objective with an undefined timeline where we don't know what the outcome is or the location of the beach that's going to be impacted or not impacted. And if I just looked at the cost here correctly, and if I'm looking at your engagement letters, just to do the Beechwood East stretch might be up to $1 million of additional cost. And I think if we're doing a beach renourishment, I think the objective is that we're going to put enough sand up there to buy us, 6, 8, 10 years of protection specifically in that location. So I guess I'm just confused as to why we would be doing this now, and we still are going to have to pay the cost to remove a bunch of other bags. Yeah, I'm not sure how it.
Do you have a legal estimate?
Legal estimate, so the timing's critical. So so for instance, at WDO, we covered the bags after the fact, after the renourishment, which could be an option in this case as well. The renourishment came, pilot project was approved after the fact, so to speak, and then it was an upland-based renourishment that came and covered the bags after that. So there was a stopgap period where they renourished to the bags, and then I can't remember how long, it was months afterwards that we came back. If there's going to be this renourishment covering the bags for this one, it would be, the legal cost would be working for the next month to get the permit submitted. I would expect $50,000 probably in legal costs to get to that point. And then as far as the bag cost, that's not I don't know how many bags need to go in. As far as I'm concerned,
I think we
just
got
covering the existing bags that are there without adding more bags would be a win for some of these people.
So your cost would be 50,000. You anticipate to get to a point where the project was ready to go.
I think that's accurate.
And
That's
Goldfinch,
an
that
estimate.
doesn't include Goldfinch's legal cost.
No, his would be dictated by his engagement.
That's right.
Are these bags intended for long-term use?
They're not permanent structures by any means, but they are intended, they are capable of,
I mean, aren't a lot of them kind of falling apart already?
the ones that are out in the water and constantly being beat. I was up at Ocean Club earlier, and the ones that are kind of out in the intertidal are damaged. The ones that are up on the dune are holding up pretty well. If they're exposed in water like that, I would not anticipate them being, a 4 to 5 year lifespan. If they are buried, then they're, they hold up a lot better until they become exposed, and then they're, doing their job.
What would the strength of one of these geotextile bags that we currently have be in relationship to a geotube material?
They're very similar materials.
Very similar in quality,
Yes.
strength.
So when they rewrote all these regulations a couple years ago too, WDO was pretty much the tip of the sword for implementing geotextile material for bags in lieu of the old materials that had been used and not successful. So another component of the regulations that changed was that not only are geotextile materials allowed and to be used for bags, they're now mandated. There was a 1-year sunset provision after those regulations were promulgated, I think in 2022, maybe 2023, that said that the old bags can still be used for a year, but 1 year from the date they were promulgated, geotextile material has to be used. It has to be UV rated, tensile strength, et cetera. It has to be, I think the terminology is specifically manufactured for the coastal environment. And we know a lot about bags because we've represented a variety of different, individuals and HOAs that have installed them. And I think there's 2 or 3 manufacturers of the bags for the companies that do them on IOP.
Mm-hmm.
Those companies install geotextiles, tubes, and bags around the world. some of which have been exposed for decades. The critical part about it, though, is that they're designed to be buried. Whenever they're exposed and subject to wave action, they will fail eventually. But the key to all of this is to bury the bags to form a core dune system, which they're technically designed to do.
But in Debidu, they're not buried.
They are now.
They are now?
They are now.
Okay, I know they weren't for a while.
They weren't for a while, and then we got the pilot project approved, and the bags have been buried for 2 years now, and you would never know they're there. The dunes are vegetated, and the bags are underneath the dune.
So the pilot project that's being proposed for us has really already been piloted by Debidu.
That's right. And to some extent, this would be a more detailed procedure. Again, when we got the Debidu project approved a few years ago, these regulations were not as detailed.
One other question. What kind of pushback is Debidu getting from environmentalists?
So the
That sort of possible
environmental
litigation?
groups challenged that permit, and the challenge was dismissed. That worked its way up to the Court of Appeals in February, and the Court of Appeals is still deciding whether it got dismissed appropriately. It
Okay.
never reached the merits.
Okay, thank you.
Here's a
Joe-
question for Stephen.
Go ahead.
So the plan of the current renourishment is to place dunes, new dune systems at the baseline, current baseline.
Either at the setback line or at seaward of the structure line, whichever is further seaward. In some
Wow.
cases, up at the Wild Dunes area, the baseline and setback line are well landward of the houses, but yeah.
Yeah, on Wild Dunes, the baseline's across
Yeah,
the
I
road,
know
so
that,
it's
but-
where the,
What we're putting in these notes up here is that we're gonna put it at the baseline.
that's correct.
So is that different than what we're gonna do? Because that's what we're telling people, we're placing dunes at the baseline, and that's a condition of them signing the easements.
The baseline or the escarpment, whichever is farther
Further
seaward.
That's right.
Correct. So in Wild Dunes, it's always the escarpment.
Yeah, but
And
we're talking about all the way up and down here
Yeah.
with these things, so.
to be clear, the setback line is the line we were using for the easement, which is a little landward of the baseline, the BCM baseline.
That's not what we're using. Well, we need to get to that because the easement that I read said baseline. And that's what all the homeowners had said, mentioned that, hey, I'll sign this if this is where the dune system goes. But are we now saying that if we put these sandbags and buried them, that we're gonna move the dune system over the bags?
So that would be, those kind of details have not been worked out yet. If we're not allowed to place sand within that landward of the baseline and there are bags landward, then we wouldn't do that. And we would just not have the pilot project in that area if those folks didn't want it. Those are all details that would have to be worked out. We don't have a formal plan. That my role here is kind of to outline what the pilot program kind of looks like, without a specific recommendation for implementing it, on certain areas right now.
So with the work would still have to be done to define even what we're going to do. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it would be because you have, some homeowners, you have a variety of opinions on what people want and willing to have, property issues and things like that. So we wouldn't want to do things that homeowners aren't, wanting to go along with. So there's a lot of questions that would go along with that too.
And on that question, that was one thing that we did discuss, was that an approval to complete this analysis to determine what the pilot project application would look like, where the engineering work to determine what it would look like, that would all be determined, and it would need to be determined in short order. But then the discretion would be with the council or whomever to actually make the call to move forward or not. And then also, as a permit applicant, you submit a permit, you can withdraw a permit. Effectively, I think the big picture on this is the cost benefit analysis. And that is whatever amount that was spent by the city on sandbags, whatever the cost is to remove those sandbags compared against the consulting and legal fees to do a pilot project. And how do those two costs compare?
What does it
Wow.
cost to remove the sandbags?
I think it's about $150,000, and that is money that is being held in escrow by the state. When we installed the bags, we had to provide escrow money to the state that's being held. So that amount will be refunded to
And I would
us.
assume that they would still want us because we're still going to have sandbags on our beach. So we're still going to have money in escrow to remove them.
That's
So
actually.
we don't know. So we're going to have to spend more money on $500,000 on more sandbags. We're going to have to send a considerable amount of legal fees on a pilot project that we don't know if we're going to be allowed to do or not. We don't know when we're going to do it. We don't know where we're going to do it. We don't have the engineering to tell us what we need to do. I feel like we're a little bit ahead of ourselves here. So
Well, I just appreciate y'all coming forward and the senator, she didn't have to do this, come down and give us another alternative. Looking at alternatives is never a bad idea, especially with beach renourishment.
Yeah, I mean,
So I
that's,
appreciate it.
happy to do it. I mean, that's the point of all of this, is to put the option in front of you. The details of the study would need to be worked out in short order to determine if it's going to be submitted or not, the pilot project.
Sorry if I missed this before. Did we mention any kind of what kind of cost savings you mentioned? Do we know like
I
an
think
estimate?
the cost savings, generally speaking, is what are the costs to reinstall bags? I don't know how long the renourishment's modeled to last. When that sand does wash away and the city's in a position to need to reinstall more bags, I think you're looking at how much did it cost to install those bags to begin with. That's the cost savings I'm talking about.
Okay.
Is how much did it cost to install those bags in the first place versus the cost to try and get this permit to leave them in. And I think the cost to install them is probably a lot higher than the cost to pursue a pilot project.
It seems like to me the best beneficial place to do this would be in Wild Dunes areas of Ocean Point and Beechwood area. I mean, if they wanted to do this a pilot project on their own, they could do that without the rest of the city or the city contributing, right? Those Ocean Point and Beechwood East owners could come to you and engage you. You could go forward with a permit and get the permit, and we could incorporate into whatever renourishment there without involving the city, right?
No, because
So
we're on
Joe-
the hook to remove them.
Yeah, Joe, and maybe you can speak to I think that in theory is correct, and I would defer to Joe on this, but I know there were challenges with not having one central permit holder, kind of the same thing that we've had with sandbags individually, where the city has gotten the emergency orders. In those situations, we did the work as well, but owners were allowed to work under our permit. Am I right that you all have tried to kind of raft together a series of owners to do a project like this, and it either was unsuccessful or it was
So
that was complicating?
Yeah, so last year, they were looking at a geotube, not bags. All the pictures that he showed you earlier, there was consideration of doing a proper geotube project, which would have needed to be a pilot project as well. And we had consensus from some of those HOAs to look into that. But effectively, the scraping project that occurred, is that, I don't know.
The shore management
The shore management project brought relief from that, those conditions, and we never moved forward with.
But you would have been able to work with them as the applicants had.
In theory, if they'd wanted to pursue it, yeah. I mean, anybody can submit for a pilot project, private parties or public entities, obviously. The ownership of the bags is something, regardless of if the city's the applicant or the private parties or the applicant, would need to be figured out, because I don't know I know the city bought some, I know the homeowners bought some. We'd have to figure out how that works, and who retains authority over the bags, et cetera.
How did Debadoo handle the cost? Was it individual
It
homeowners?
was, and so again, that's the reason that's such a different project, is because that's basically just 4 different lots, which aren't continuous. There's no contiguity when those lots. It's like effectively 4 distinct parcels that did it separately. And if this project if you were to move forward with this one, it would be a much more linear dune system,
Mhm.
a much more, it would be a larger scale and much more detailed pilot project type.
And Debadu's not a municipality, are they? They're a
No,
colony
and those
under
private
Georgetown
individuals-
County.
Those private individuals were the ones that installed the bags,
Uh-huh.
but the Coastal Carolina University is the one that's doing that study.
Got it.
And again, that was under the old pilot project regulations, which don't require a university to be the applicant anymore.
It seems to me we just need to know more about what potential cost would be. I think you're talking about content or doing the study that would determine what the scope of work would be and how much the potential cost would be, and then what the offset would be by removal of sandbags we currently have.
So
And
if I were in your shoes, I mean, I guess I think that there are potentially two paths forward. Either path A is this is too complicated and an already complex situation of needing to get easements, escrow money, contractors on board. We're kind of trying to go at light speed to get it done just in ordinary circumstances without a pilot program. So I think council would be, I think it would be reasonable to say this is just, it's a good idea. It's an interesting idea, but it's too last minute. We're inserting too much uncertainty at the ninth hour and we'll pass. So I think that's definitely a path. The other path would be, and I guess from my perspective, there is some value to the bags that are out there, but we've heard that they need to be bolstered. They need to be kind of reconstituted. So I don't know that the value of the bags, that we really know that. I mean, they're slumped in a lot of places. I think they're pretty much useless in a lot of places. So I would say if you were of a mindset to want to investigate further, I think we'd have to get some of this information pulled together. Like what is the value of what we're working to save? I mean, the point is, Scott's point, and in our planning, we are not planning and having these exposed for a long time. I mean, we're planning for this project to last 8 years. So
We've got some time.
we have a little bit of time in terms of maybe not to pull the bags out, but you all are looking at other alternatives, groins, geotubes, other things are kind of in motion. And I guess I don't fully understand, if this thing is appealed, like Debadu is, what that ultimately, what's the likelihood of our program being appealed? If it's appealed, what's the likelihood of it surviving the appeal? What's the cost of the appeal? So I guess I would be in the same boat of not having all the information right now to make a final determination. So again, from me, it would be either this looks like it's just too much, too late, and let's pass, or it's an opportunity to save some bags, pull together additional information and report back at your next meeting. And either one, I think, is a very reasonable path.
Rusty, what was your motion?
To move
Just
To move forward?
To move the
Agenda
number
items.
11,
Oh,
Just
so there's
for
no
discussion.
motion about whether we do this or not.
Correct.
yeah, it was just to reorder the agenda.
But it is discussion and consideration.
Right.
I mean, Douglas, I think you summed it up. I think that, this is and thank you for coming and I appreciate it. But we're at the 11th hour of getting ready to start pumping sand and the implementation plans are in place. This could potentially be another diversion effort of existing resources that we've got already assigned to, pull this off without a hitch. And I think, if this had been a year ago or 6 months ago, even, we might have taken a closer look at it, but we've got a completely undefined project with what looks to be, to me, a very significant price tag compared to just removing the bags. And if the bags are in bad shape, they've been out there, what the bags are like. So my recommendation would be that, thank you for your time, but I think we should punt on this one.
Are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion to not consider this at this time. And I guess that's it. To not consider.
Motion has to be in the positive.
I make a motion to,
Actually, if you don't make a motion, that just dies.
Oh.
So,
I don't want to defer even. I think we just, I make a motion to discontinue the efforts with this project.
Second.
You got a second?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got something I want to ask. Engagement letters, would that have to be signed before we even move forward to get additional cost? I mean, would there be a charge a fee that you would need up front?
I'm not sure how the procurement code works in terms of how that gets approved, but I mean, we would need to be engaged to run the traps, to
Mhm.
figure out. And I think honestly, the majority of the work to figure that out would be the engineering costs. Him going out there doing whatever survey work is necessary to determine the condition of the bags, where you're going to want to cover them, if you're not going to want to cover them, coming back to you with that cost and with that estimate. And then, but to move forward legally, yes, we would need to be engaged. And I don't know how that works.
Well, I'm in favor of the latter. So to that point, I would make a motion that we
Are you amending the motion?
do further.
That's it.
We have to,
You didn't second it. Nobody
Yeah, I'll
seconded it.
second it.
Katie
Yeah,
seconded
Oh, did you?
Katie seconded
Okay.
it.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, Katie.
Sorry.
So if this was appealed, your legal costs would be significantly higher, right? To run it through. an
I'd
appeal.
so if it gets appealed, it's not, you're not pulling the bags out right there.
No.
The bags stay in and then you fight the appeal. for
Yeah,
however
I'm just
long
talking
it
about
takes.
the legal cost of
Yeah.
that sounds like it, at $700 an hour for Goldfinch, and I don't know what yours was, 550, I think.
Mhm.
Legal costs going to add up pretty quick, especially on an appeal and through that process, I imagine. And that's my only concern is that this is an unknown cost going into the future because most likely it's going to get appealed.
Joe, do you have a sense of whether that's true, that that more than a 50% chance it would be appealed?
I don't know if it would be appealed or not. You're right that if it does get appealed, the cost will be higher. I don't know what those costs would look like. I would say, just to the appeals process takes a lot of time. With the Devido case was appealed in 2021 or 2022. We just went to the Court of Appeals last month, effectively. I don't know, I can't comment on what those costs were, but I think a fair estimate of costs to get through a Court of Appeals type scenario would definitely be a couple $100,000.
For you.
For me, I mean, mechanically, our firm is the one that handles that work. I don't know how involved Goldfinch would be on that front.
I'm of the mind it's still worthy of investigation as far as to additional cost and where it may save us money in the long run.
Bev,
Or
you have Bev, you have a
I
comment?
do. I thank Katie for asking this question of where this came from. Why am I hearing myself? Am I doing something wrong?
We can hear
I'll
you.
just keep talking and try to ignore it. Okay. I'm not one for surprises, and this was a complete surprise to me. So when Katie asked, well, how did this come about? Where did this come from? That was completely valid, and I'm glad you asked it. I think there's so many unanswered questions here. I'm afraid of the unknown costs, and I am of the mind to I think it's about 6 months too late. I appreciate hearing about it. I think, it might have been a good alternative at one time, but I think the train has left the station for us, and I think we need to be on a path of what's known, not what's unknown. That's where I am.
Ideas come from all different directions, is all I can say. Who knows where it originated?
Any other discussion?
I was gonna
David?
say,
I think we do.
on the surface, I think it's something that we should have looked at, like I said, he started out a year ago. We've got a study to basically look at alternatives, which potentially could come back and say, this would be an ideal place to put a geotube. So let's do it right, put the engineering effort. This to me, at kind of last minute, to say, $500,000 worth of sandbags is not I'm not sure it's worth it to take the risk that how it could impact our current project. So I just, I'd like to see what the other alternatives come up with from our study that we're actually looking at. And again, what we lose is if we have to come back, go through this process, dig up and lay sand, what's the difference of that cost compared to what do we save by pushing it through now versus the risk of how it could impact our current project. So I just don't see with the timing, again, I like the idea. I wish we had started this 6 months or a year ago.
Well, we're not talking about spending $500,000 tonight. We're talking about getting more information, but whatever.
It's not going to cost us anything to find out more information. Is that what I'm understanding? At our next meeting, you mentioned like to get like more information.
I guess the key pieces of information would be value of, would there be some expense to developing kind of a concept of what's there, what the value is of what's there now physically, what would potentially get approved as a pilot program?
I mean, I think just as a very general, answer tonight is you look at the areas where the bags look like they're in good shape. And if the pilot program was restricted to just those areas, which may only be, 5 or 6 houses or properties in certain areas, then you still have all of the soft costs to get the application together. That doesn't change a whole lot. But the implementation of the project, you may not have to add, a whole bunch of sandbags to a certain area. Whereas if you included other areas, you would have to do something like that. So that the kind of the upfront soft costs maybe don't change a lot, but depending on, an unanswerable question on where would you actually want to do this, which is half an engineering question and half a, just community support type question, who would actually want to do it. That's kind of, that would be an unanswered one, even with the existing kind of condition. We know the ones down at Beechwood, the south end of the island are in fair shape for the most part, but it's not a substantial core dune. It's kind of a stack of 4 or 5 bags high in a lot of areas. And that's kind of it. That's not exactly the storm protection, because if we get hit by a hurricane, those are going to fall over. Those are trying to withstand some erosion that was getting close to the house. So that would be a part of it to see, if this is really what we want is like a full core functioning dune, then yes, it would involve some pretty significant costs for that. And I'll stop with that.
So I think we could provide some information at the next meeting if you all were of a mind to do that, kind of at least pull together what we know in terms of what parts are functioning well, what parts aren't. But it sounds like to go much more than that would take some investment, at least. So any other comments, discussion? With none, I would call for the vote on the motion to not proceed with a pilot program at this point,
Discontinue.
to discontinue, to positively discontinue. All those in
Gotta be-
favor,
It's Rob's rules. It's got to be positive.
all those in favor of discontinuing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed signify by saying nay.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank
Over
you.
the time.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any citizens' comments? Okay, no citizens' comments. Next order of business is nomination and election of chair. I will open the floor for nominations for Ways and Means Chair.
I'd like to nominate Mayor Philip Pounds.
Second.
Mayor Pounds.
Can we do a discussion or can we make other nominations?
Other nominations, yep.
I would nominate John Bogosian.
I'll second that.
Any others? With no others, close the floor for nominations. We'll go in order of nominations. All of those in favor of Mayor Pounds signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay.
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 Next nomination, John Bogosian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay.
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 Bev, you voted twice. I think.
Sorry. Aye.
John, let
much
you
room.
take it for vice chair from there.
All right, I open the, I open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Scott Pierce.
Second.
Second.
I nominate Jimmy Ward.
Second.
Any other nominations? Any discussion or comments? I guess we take the first one first, which is for Scott Pierce. So all those in favor, Scott Pierce, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
Nay.
Nay.
Scott wins. Next item is the dashboard of city operations and short-term rental report.
Yep, that's
You
in,
gotta
that's in
cover
your
that,
packet.
yeah.
One exciting piece of news is City Hall, as of about 2 hours ago, has a new human resource position accepted and conditionally hired at this point. So we're excited for
great.
that. Sad to see
Starting-
Janice go, but
Yeah.
excited to have a replacement lined up.
Starting when?
May 15th? May 11th. Janice is going to be remote. She's kind of between, well, she's fully relocated at this point, so she's going to stay with us as remote for as long as she can and help us through that transition. Police officers, we have, it says 2. I think we actually have, is it 3? Yeah, three vacancies in police. Fires 3, correct, chief? And recreation has 1 now. We
Does
have-
that, does it, sorry, the police, does that include the 2 that we just voted to add on or no? When-
No,
When is that?
FY '27 budget, so we.
Oh, okay. So
we'll
that's not.
start
that
that
would-
process in
Chief,
July.
I thought you had 2 openings, but then one sergeant moved into one of those openings, so we still got 2 openings.
Yes, sir. I was just doing math in my head.
Yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
2,
2
okay.
openings.
Okay, so get the reports right. Oh, that's right. Public Works has one as of yesterday. So.
All right, anything else on that, on your dashboard, Douglas?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So the distribution 4% and 6% over time, and then looking at the license rentals pie chart. Can you explain that to me? Because the numbers, unless I'm not understanding it, don't seem to really add up. Like the
This is
commercial condos, with no STRL, are they owned
which line are
by?
you?
So
So
this one right here,
the blue in the pie chart.
the purple.
So this is the 100. I think this is the infamous 119. So
Okay.
we are now showing the data really kind of in 2 different ways. There are technically 1,730 short-term rental licenses.
Right.
But one of those licenses, well, actually, I think it's 2 of those licenses are covering hotels that have 119 units in them that previously had a short-term rental license for every unit. So to kind of have an apples to apples comparison for our 25 data, calendar year 25 data, to compare that to 23 data, you really have to add that it's really 117 back. It's 119 or 119 back.
Well, but there's 2 licenses, so it would be 117, right?
I think
Yeah,
it's,
The 2 combined are 119.
but don't you have to take, because we do have 2 licenses.
Right, we do. No, they don't
They're
have
not
short
in
term.
Oh, they're not, there is a
No.
commercial, they
Yeah.
have business licenses as
Oh,
hotels, but
right.
not short-term rental
Gotcha.
licenses. That's right. So that gets that number to 1,849. So the column here, this is all of the short-term rentals plus the 119,
Right,
which
I'm
gets you to
just-
the 1849. And that's that purple sliver.
right. I'm just
Are those
wondering how we
commercial
get to 66% of the 6% investment properties and the 34% for primary.
That's over to the left. That's the said data from the county, Douglas.
Yes,
So that doesn't always match
Yeah.
up with ours.
that's correct. Yeah, that's
Basically.
just the county data on what percent of our property is 6% and what percent is 4%.
Because if you add it up, investment properties over here, it's 64. Yeah. And then 36 for,
So I
Primary.
think that's, so it would be the investment properties plus the primary. You do have some 4%. You have 3% of the properties or 4% properties with a short-term rental license. I think you have to add those.
Yeah, and I
two
think the
together.
residents are on, Ashley, I think those are based on parcels. So the parcels would be the 3466 split, comparable to the 1849. Licenses are licenses. So what you got two licenses that have aggregated up under 119 units. So that tracks.
not following that. Yeah, sorry. I'm just not really sure how it went to 34%. So we're including the commercial condos as all individual 6% properties. I get, I don't know, just when I add up the pie chart, the numbers, 3% primary with an SCR and without an SCR is 36. I just don't.
Because those are licenses, I think, Ashley. So-
I think that
Well,
is, I think
isn't
that is
all the
correct.
parcels though? on
Pie says
outcomes?
licensed, I think. So we're looking at licenses versus,
Yeah, this plus
Parcels.
These are dwellings versus license.
So these would have commercial licenses. So the pie chart would have,
No, it's just the short-term rental licenses.
But this is with a license and without a license. The pie chart is.
Right.
And primary.
I don't know, you want to try to take this off and
Yeah.
get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we can. It was just confusing to me why it didn't add up.
The numbers haven't changed.
Well,
We'll
I
take it.
understand that, but I'm just confused because it looks like, that little chart over to the left side just looks like our primary resident population has decreased, and I just
It
don't know
has.
that that's.
I'm sure it has something to do with the 119, but I'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Next, are you done with that?
yes, unless there are any other questions.
All right. The next, our department reports, they're in the packet. Unless there's any comment or questions on those, we'll.
So question from staff.
Yeah.
Do you all want, this is our first Ways and Means meeting. Would you like to continue to have departmental reports at Ways and Means?
No.
Question has come up, do we put these at the other committees and allow them to be, or do we put them in both? Do you all have and I guess I would say that for any item on the agenda, we went back to the kind of last Ways and Means packets that were done. We've been trying to kind of curtail this agenda to only things that have a financial impact. Departmental reports, I mean, they do have a financial impact, but maybe it's only a tangent of an impact. So we could do that either way. If you'd like for us to streamline this packet, they're getting, they may be
I think we should deal with ways and means,
Yeah.
period.
departmental report,
This
is that far
this
enough
is-
This is
outside?
really more information than
This is
anything.
I'll
Public Safety
rec-
Committee.
I'll
I
recommend
think
for
the-
either public
I agree
safety
with
or
you.
just to bring the full
Yeah,
council.
I agree. I think they should go back to the committees and then be in the council packet as
Yeah.
But if
just
there's
as-
something from that
Financial,
that
if
is
there's a,
very
Yeah.
obviously like a purchase of
Yeah.
something or.
that would always
something that-
come.
Then it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would always work its way to
Okay.
Ways and Means anyway.
I think we were kind of thinking that might help this meeting. So we'll plan next time to put those in the subcommittee agendas and take them out of the Ways. and
Yep.
Means.
And is it the same for the dashboard? Or
I think we see that as driving revenue. I mean, I guess I'm sorry, that we have the short-term rental dashboard. Yeah, I could see the same as the departmental operations dashboard. Short-term rental report.
Wait, was that kind of stuff?
No, that was
typically-
developed, that dashboard was developed when the workshop was developed. So I could, that one is one, that doesn't squarely go to any single committee, so that could go to a council packet instead.
That makes sense to me.
You want to do, so take the operational dashboard, put it at council, leave the short-term rental dashboard in this packet, or do you want to put that,
No,
I
that
would
needs to
leave it.
stay here
stay here? That
It
kind
does.
of, okay.
because it's definitely financial.
All right. Got it. That's helpful to us. Thank
All
you.
right. Next item is financial review. First item is the March financial statement. I guess that's you, Deborah.
Yes, sir. So we only have 3 more months before we end our fiscal year, and we total year-to-date revenue, we're at 20.3 million, which is about 62% of the budget. We're forecasting that we will end the year at 37.3 million, which is about 14% above what we budgeted for total revenue. Our total expenses are at $18.9 million to a budget of 30 million. That's about 63% of the budget spent. We are projecting 35 million, which is about 16% over what we initially said. And a lot of that is because of the beach and some of the drainage projects. Our capital projects, that we're making purchases towards our capital X list, as well as the drainage projects are underway. So that's adding to some of the costs there. The muni fund fees are projecting to be higher, and then we are deferring some costs that we initially planned for, like the rescue boat, the underground lines, and marina parking and green space, which we'll talk about a little bit later when I get to the budget. As far as hospitality, revenues there is still flat, and we'll look at that once we get to the tourism schedules. We, of course, they had some boat costs in there that's being deferred as well. State accommodations taxes are coming in higher, and they have some deferred costs with the boat and green space. And then we are, of course, projecting about 1/3 of the beach project will be spent this fiscal year, and then the remaining in FY 27 once that budget has been discussed and approved. Some of the things that are driving our general fund revenues are property taxes are a little bit higher, as well as the local option tax. We are projecting that they will both come in higher than what we initially planned. And the franchise fees with the licenses, we're projecting that they will come in higher than budget. But our business licenses, business license and permits are still, they're having their renewals right now, so we'll get a better gauge maybe this month in April. But right now, business licenses are a little bit lower, and they are trending lower year over year from 2025. So hopefully we'll see some improvements there, and we'll have a better projection for that. For general expenses, our general fund, we are projecting that salaries will be a little bit less because we had a position that wasn't filled at the beginning of the year, as well as the position will not be filled. So that for as the fire department, we are steadily working on their overtime is trending a little bit higher because they had some people in school. Those people have now graduated. So we should that kind of level off. We're hoping that between the vacancies and the additional overtime, that will kind of even out this year, but on that, as well as public works overtime, that is trending a little bit higher than we anticipated as well. There should be some savings in payroll building department because they had 2 vacancies that were not filled at the beginning of the year, but savings has been offset with some contract fees because we had to hire an outside contractor to fill the building inspector's position, which we don't need to do that for next year. For our legal fees, we think they should be a little bit less than what we projected, so there should be some savings in that line item as well. The city is still performing well, does have a strong cash balance. Interest rates are, of course, continuing to decline. There has been a 15% increase in the cash balance year over year compared to last year this time. Interest year to date, this interest for the month of March was $174,000 and year to date is 1.6. So we are doing very well with in interest based on the fund balances that are in those accounts. I think I addressed.
So revenue year to date is greater than expenditures by 1.3 million.
Yes, sir. Year to date.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Page 30. Yeah. This schedule again kind of shows some projections of where we are. This is compared to budget of what we are currently anticipating for a budget as well as forecast. So at the top, you will see what the estimated fund balances are. And then we kind of list out all the big, large projects that are coming up over the next 3 years. So you can kind of see what the city is projecting to spend in large dollars. Of course, this does not show any revenue, it doesn't itemize revenue, but it kind of gives you a picture of where the city plans to land. And we'll continue to work and develop this as we get forecasts and work and develop it more with income once we figure out the best way to show this information. On page 32, we have our tourism funds, and they are still tracking very well for the municipal accommodations fee. The last reported amount was $116,000 that came in. We're still tracking about 8% above where we were last year. So revenues are still very strong in muni accommodations.
Deborah, can I ask you a question on this one? And I think it would apply to the beach fund too. I like how you populate the forecast here, and I think your forecasts roll into the budget anchor year. It looks like we've got that 443,000 in May, and I think last year didn't we have a one-time true up, and we kind of not sure where that was multiple periods that it might have included. And if you look at the prior years, we're running like 150, 200. But then we jumped last year in the 4 to 422. And I'm just wondering, are we expecting another, big one-time true up in May like we had last time? This might just be a carry forward from last year in the forecast. But could you take a look at that? Because I think if that is closer to the 200 on this and the beach fund, I think that impacts our revenue forecast in the budget as well.
Yes, I would definitely take a look at that, make sure that's not a one-time. I'll take a look at that.
I
Make
can't
sure
remember
that's
what
not
that, I think we got something unexpected from
Airbnb settlement?
Was
think
that
that
in
went to the
June?
beach fund, didn't it? Oh, that would
Did-
have gone on the expense side, but the revenue, I think
Yeah,
that was
the-
separate.
It went to miscellaneous, that settlement.
Looks like something that is
Yeah,
in there.
but I'll definitely take a look and see if it was a one-time.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that. For our state accommodations tax, we have not received any additional revenue, so we're still projecting that to come in at about 3% over prior year. Page 34 covers our county pass-through, and that is, of course, a quarterly as well, and we're projecting about 11% over prior year. Hospitality taxes, it remains flat. We did receive 57 reported for the last month, and looks like some of that could be timing, considering the previous year was 40,000 compared to 57,000. So there may be some timing there, but it's still flat compared to where we were last year, same time.
We had one or two payees or payors went out of business. That
Yeah,
explains the
they're-
huge
Right, there was
variations.
one company for sure we know went out of business, and the company that replaced them, I think, is scheduled to open in May. So
Maybe May, yeah.
yeah, so maybe that'll pick back up a little bit.
But that wasn't a huge revenue generator.
Right. And then the beach, like Scott mentioned, it's kind of the same thing as the muni fund. So we will take a look at that to make sure that 443 is not a one-time allotment. For our local option tax, we received 76,000. That still has us tracking at about 5%. So we're planning on ending the year at 5% higher than we were last year this time. Our project worksheets are attached, starting with page 38, going to about page 59. I will, for, of course, the interest of time, because we want to definitely cover the budget, I'm going to allow you to take a look at those on your own and let me know if you have any questions regarding those. What's next?
All right,
If
next,
there's no
next
questions.
item
Oh.
is FY '27 budget plan draft 3, which starts on page 60 of the packet. So you're going to take us through that as well, Deborah.
Okay.
You want to go through the changes since the last time they've seen it
Yes.
first?
So I'll start on page. You want me to go through the changes first and not go through this? Or-
60, 61.
I would say, you want me to go through the changes?
Oh, you talking about these?
Yes.
These things. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You go for it.
All right. So one of the things that we were asked to do was to increase business licenses, permits, and short-term rental parking fees. So I did it on an average, and there's a schedule in your packet that shows how that average about 15% between the four revenue streams gets us about $713,000 added to this current year's budget. Another question was asked previously, or whether we were taking full advantage of the percentage, the maximum amount that we could take for franchise fees, which are on the schedule, 5%, 1% for telecommunication and 5% for public utilities and so on and so forth. And yes, we are taking the maximum amount allowed by the state or whatever organization is paying those franchise fees.
Hey, Deborah, on the first one, I did look at the individual ones and it looks like they all went up 15%. So is on the business license and STR, both the flat fee and the increment of revenue, both of those went up by 50. You took both of those up. by 15% from where they currently are?
I didn't do straight 15% across the board. I did,
Well, did you take both up though? Both the flat fee plus the?
yes,
the-
yes. Whatever percentage I did it
Okay,
with both.
all right.
Now, I did have a schedule in here. Well, I didn't include it in your packet, but, if we leave the flat fee at what it is for, this is short-term rental. If I leave the flat fee at what it currently is, okay, so this is
Is it currently at 450?
currently at 460.
460, okay.
If I take it up to, if we take it up to 525, that's about a 14% increase. And that is about $95,000 additional revenue based on what the fee is and what we currently think that we're going to make.
And then on the revenue piece, the first 2,000 is included in that. And then
That's, yeah.
Schedule
including
rate
that
also
base.
went up.
it's, the schedule rate also went from 460 or wherever it is now to $4.60 per
Up
thousand.
15%.
Yes, yes. So it's like 450. Oh, the 450 is that the base? Is that called the base?
The base rate, and then you get the
Yes.
scheduled rate
The
is
sch-
the cost
right.
per thousand. Also
Yes.
should go up 15%.
Right. So that would be about a 14% increase with the, what is this rate called then? What is the 460 called?
That's the scheduled rate.
The schedule rate. If we change that, that would be about 14%
Okay.
to 525.
How does that
And-
compare to other business license fees? That amount,
Yeah, it's significantly more, kind of
like 4.5 times
Yeah.
higher.
two to three, yeah, maybe
is.
of the lowest rate, yeah, of an on-city.
For short-term rentals.
The business.
business.
For a, and if it's off-city, it's twice the rate.
Right.
So some off-city businesses pay a couple hundred, but this is, yeah, it's significantly higher than any other rate.
And so is the incremental rate too,
Yes,
the base rate and the incremental rate,
yes.
significantly higher.
So that,
What are the hotels by comparison? Are there those are considered business? I'm
That's
wondering,
correct.
Is that where we lost the revenue for the front?
Yes, yeah, I think we did an analysis that
Don't-
change in classification was somewhere 50 to 70,000 of lost revenue, I think. I have in mind, but it is a lower rate for hotels.
Is that something we should, I mean, is there a reason like the hotel, hospitality rooms, should that be aligned closer to? It seemed like just the classification, we lost it, but the business didn't change any.
Yeah,
It's really
so we could look at that, the classifications have many different business types in there. Sometimes they're somewhat random, but we could definitely look at what what class they went to and adjust them to better align with the other accommodation business license.
I'd just be curious, what would the hotels look like if they were what revenue impact would we gain or what would the change be if we had the hotels align with the
Paying
short-term
closer to the rate that they used to pay.
or the short-term, yeah, whatever the short-term rentals. That would, I guess we'd have to apply it to all hotels, but
Yeah,
But you're still looking at 120 licenses versus 2.
yeah, we
Yeah,
lose,
but-
we lose on the base,
But-
but we might get gain back on the revenue. I guess that's just the,
And the revenue- It could be, I don't know what it.
is the rate on the revenue different between the?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they're both significantly reduced. They're
I mean, I think my business license is very reasonably priced.
Yeah, there are two pre-existing hotels that have always
They've
been
there.
classified as a hotel, always would have had that
It would be
rate.
a
So
spot
this,
rate,
this
yeah.
change would obviously impact them. You want us to look at,
I'm just curious what the impact would be if they're, it didn't seem like the business changed on the front beach. We just had a reclassification and we lost a lot of revenue.
so and this is deeper in the agenda for discussion, but these type things obviously will have to happen by ordinance and would have to work out, all of the details of exactly what
Yeah, I'm
each
not
of these
suggesting
rates
we're
would
baking it
be.
in. Yeah.
For the time being, I think we're generically talking about making adjustments that roughly equivalent are equal to increasing revenues 15%. I think the details as to how we do that will work out when we enact an ordinance. But that was our charge, was to kind of just assume that the correct levers would get pulled to adjust revenue up 15%.
Okay, operating and capital X budget changes there. So I have another spreadsheet where I included, and it's not included in draft 3 because we just sorted it out on Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. But Monday, yesterday, yes. So we made some changes based on the Evergreen study, and those have been baked into draft 4 budget. And I will show you how that looks a little bit later on compared to where we are now. We did add the $60,000 in there for the AV updates to the council chambers. So we included that. The fire department, 50% cost for the public safety drone. That was on the capital sheet, but it was not picking up the line correctly. So that had to be included. That was just kind of like a keying error or formal error. The fire truck, we have changed that back to be paid with debt service. And the current budget does increase millage to offset the $300,000 cost. And so the debt service for a payment, an annual payment, is about $312,000. Public Works, we did change the 11-yard loader from $220,000 back to the side loader for $435,000 to run parallel with the phasing of the garbage truck. So that added $215,000 back to our budget. I think beach preservation, I think we talked about adding the revenue and the cost for the sandbags, and that kind of nets down to zero.
So that's the number you asked about earlier. Apparently, it's not 150, it's
It's
7.
71.
So
Seven is
that,
how
that
much?
money's already in an escrow though?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and then the beach preservation fund, this was updated for the bid that was received, and we went with the Marinex bid, even though that has not been voted on yet.
Correct.
Has it? So that decreased by $5.2 million. Before I go to the next page, I didn't write it on here, but there was also discussion about Carter. I increased the budget to absorb the cost, but I will need permission if you want to leave it there or not to increase that cost. I think we increased it by $8,000 because of the additional routes.
Yeah, and that's later on your agenda for discussion. So
Okay.
It
we
is.
plugged it in at the higher rate. If you want to do something else,
So right now it's in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one potential opportunity for revenue that we included in here just because we don't take advantage of this currently. And it's associated with property taxes. So the city credits the taxpayers back 100% of that local option tax. The state requires that the city credits at least 71% back. And if we decide to not credit the 100% and just do the 71%, that's about $377,000 that could be added to the budget. It's not baked in here because that needs to be decided on. But these other municipalities, this is kind of what they do. Mount Pleasant, Folly Beach, North Charleston, all do the 71%. That's the maximum the minimum amount required, and then Sullivan's Island and City of Charleston does the 100% like Isle of Palms does.
How long have we been doing the 100%? Any idea?
Since the initiation of that tax, which I'm not sure when that tax was
Yeah, I don't know.
established.
I've never known it to be otherwise.
Yeah.
But I may not have known.
I mean, yeah, I'd like us to consider this in kind of the whole mix, because we might be able to offset some millage increase or what have you, but this is basically money we collect. We just are sending it, we're crediting it all back, and it's a different bucket. It's a variable bucket versus more of a fixed bucket. And, I'm not saying bake it in on top of everything else. We may want to be able to use that as a lever to offset some of the other taxing increases that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess to that point, we do, if you recall, we initially had a millage increase, and we had that alone. We have now added this 15% increase. So I think we have two increases in there, and we're expecting direction on either pulling one back or a hybrid of the two, but they're both in there at kind
You
of,
have three, actually. You have the 2.77% millage increase. You have this 15% increase in these fees and the STR, business, et cetera. And then we also put in debt financing on the fire truck that included millage
300,
increase to
yeah.
recover the financing.
I think we had that only in there as grant though, right?
We
Wasn't
had,
that?
we had it in, we pulled the grant out and put it in as debt service. Now there's another increase for debt service.
There's other property tax increase to cover the
Yeah.
Yeah.
service.
I think the logic there was we're going to go ahead whether we get a grant.
Yeah.
or not.
Mhm.
So I guess to your point, we need, at some point here soon, we're gonna need you to provide direction on what revenues we want to include in the budget,
That's correct.
what sources they're coming from.
Yep. And I guess we'll add to the kind of list of decision points we need. Do you want to send back some of this local option sales tax?
What is that a tax on? Is it any purchases in the city? Or
I think it's all sales, 1% of all sales, I think. I think it's 1% of all sales.
It is.
It's everything?
I don't know of any exceptions.
I'm not sure food, like,
Yeah, what about,
not cooked food, grocery store, and that kid.
Non-prepared food, such as groceries and prescription drugs, are exempt.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
I mean, one option could be trade this out for the fire truck millage or something.
Yeah,
We
I
can
think
do
we're
some
gonna have
trading.
to- We're gonna have to figure out a process to get the decision point
Right.
on that
Yep.
here soon, so.
But I mean, I guess my point is that local option sales tax is being paid for by, it's not just residents. It's not like a property tax. It's not being paid by residents. I mean, it's being paid by everybody. It's not just residents.
Everybody.
I think the residents are used to getting 100%.
The credit
Of it
for it.
back.
The residents,
The residents benefit from that credit.
right, from the credit.
But everybody pays.
They're all
Yeah.
taxes.
It's who we're taxing is what that was getting at, who we're taxing. not-
But you're getting
But it's all
a
coming
credit
back.
now that you would get less of a credit
I got you.
going forward.
All right, you,
So some decisions that have to be made, if you,
I'm sorry, Deborah.
let's
Can we,
go
can
to,
we just go through a couple other, can you tell us where the groins are? We were on the beach though. I was looking for that. I may have just missed it.
the groins are on,
I saw a note I think on the beach page, but I didn't see.
I think
they're
the
in the
number,
capital, they should be on the capital page under debt. So they're in there as debt. So they're on page,
oh, it's sand retention. It's
yeah,
called,
it's sand retention. It's called sand retention.
it's not called a groin in the budget. It's called a sand retention. Oh, it is.
I put groin in there
It's on
because
in the
the-
capital budget or the
Yeah.
beach budget?
it's under capital budget. I don't know what page that is. for.
It's 22.
22 on my, yes, on my,
So
on mine.
attention.
Oh, you're looking at one. Yeah, so you see the debt there? There's debt in there for that as well. Starting in 28.
So we had said that we were going to finance those? I just don't remember.
I don't think a decision's been made on that.
No, there hasn't been a decision made.
We just had, what, $4 million in there as a placeholder?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we did
Talk
had
about,
an understanding of financing them. We can.
It's been-
We just made that.
yeah, it's been in there as debt since draft one. I think that's what, how we presented it. So, I mean, if we need to pay cash for it, we can pay cash for it, but right now it's in there as debt.
I think it was put in there that way when the bids, we were expecting much higher bids, and I think we were assuming there would not be cash to pay for it.
Thanks for telling me where they were.
Okay, so I just want to go to, before we talk about summary of decisions, let's go to the page that's called the council summary page. As soon as I find it. It's actually page 2 in your packet.
Page 2.
In your packet. Once you pass all that other, when the actual budget actually starts, and not all
Oh,
the
okay.
All right, so 71.
prerequisite stuff.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So with this current budget, with all the stuff that we've talked about,
Look at it. Thanks.
we have revenue at 37.2 million and expenses at 41 million. And then remember, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the core expenses for this budget is actually the beach project. That's the biggest, the largest expense for this year, FY27, as well as the 2 drainage projects, one being Waterway at 1.6, and then the other being 38th and Palm at 2 million. But there is grant funds offsetting that $2 million for 38th. And what council discussed, if we don't get the grant money, then we don't do the project. So it will zero itself out. So with all that being said, we're projecting the fund balance to end at $50.8 million for FY26. But remember, there's a lot of stuff baked in here, a lot of revenue baked in here from property taxes, revenue baked in from the increased cost, the increased fees. So that needs to be decided on so that we can get some real numbers.
So that number has the 15% increase baked in there, all of that we haven't made decisions on yet.
Yes.
I think it has $791,000 of property tax increase. It has the 700 and something thousand of those fees and then about $300,000 of debt financing for the fire truck admin.
That's correct. So we definitely need to decide what we want to do so we can start wrapping this up and making a decision on where we want to land for FY27. So the decisions that need to be made, the Evergreen study, and there is a sheet on page 143. I think it's 143 of the packet.
136, I think this.
Is that 136? Well, that wasn't, no, go back up. Yeah, right there, that one. So that wasn't included in your regular packet.
Oh,
So
got
that probably changed your page numbers. So based on where we were, draft one, where we just presented COLA and merit, that total of $12.6 million. Once we add our composition study, that added 431 for regular and 40,000 for overtime, and fringe of 174 for a total of $647,000. Once we added the incentive, that added an additional 223,000 for regular, overtime, and fringe. And that total cost with those two components added additional $870,000. Now some of that cost has been baked in the budget, but this cost is a little bit less than what we had baked in the budget. So I think that's to a tune of about maybe $200,000 less than what this budget currently has in it. So that's taking $200,000 off of this budget. That spreadsheet and our overall budget does assume about a 5% adjustment for public safety because of their vacancies. There are always some vacancies in either department, so that's why that number, what you guys were used to seeing is the 150,000, I think, for incentives, but that's about 5% less than what.
This includes all the adjustments we talked about for the employees the other day. Okay. great.
Yeah, so,
That includes
That
every,
baked it all in. Good.
yeah, so
Okay,
for,
good.
the budget that was in your packet, I think had roughly it's close to $1 million, maybe a little bit over $1 million based on the very first assumptions from Evergreen. These adjustments they are incorporating in the administration committee's recommendations. So it's a slight savings over the initial Evergreen study amount plugged in.
So I have a question. If we go and look at the percentile question, which people were concerned about
Mhm.
with the neighboring communities, the 18 communities that we've been looking at, and that we were in the 60th percentile, these changes to the budget, especially first responders, not just the ones that are the new hires, but all of the first responders, where do we land as far as that percentile goes?
I'm going to turn that over to Councilman Pierce.
I think it's roughly 80th percentile at the beginning rungs of the ladder.
I understand that. How about everybody else?
And then it progresses. I don't know that we can give you an exact percent for
Each
all
person.
grades. I think it's going to be different based on the different grades, but the focus was on that lower grade, and then it builds progressively up at a 7% between grades. What's the
10, is it 10%?
10% for
10%.
10 for
for
public safety.
and 7 for non-public
It's
safety.
just a really simple question. Where do we land as far as the percentiles go overall? You must have had a starting point somewhere, right? To get us in the 60th percentile, or Evergreen did. So that's the big question everybody wants to know. Or we're
I think
gonna,
I think to answer that, you'd have to analyze each grade. So I think it will be a different answer for each grade. We could average out, you could average out all of the grades and come up with an average, but it would be,
you did that to get to the 60th percentile, correct?
I don't know. I don't think so. It was the methodology
I don't think
was
it's ever been
generally
that simple.
starting at the lowest grade and then adding incrementally to each grade above that. And that yielded a schedule that is generating these numbers.
It's very easy, it's very simple, it's a critical question. The people want to know how is this
What-
going to affect all of our first responders especially?
Well, we can't give the actual, we don't know, I don't have the data in front of me to give the actual percentage, but when the data was analyzed, and all the adjustments were made, it did come in about the 80th percentile.
At the lowest,
The lowest.
The lowest.
the
level.
lowest tier.
We all understand that.
So you
It's very
want, you
clear.
want for,
Just
But we
the
don't know.
overall impact for the whole,
but average all, you want
just
it. an
where
average.
I am today, if I'm making, X amount of dollars with this budget, and I've been with it here like 5 years, or pick any number,
It's really different.
where am I going to be next year?
It's very different depending on what grade you are specifically. It is not a flat across the board X percentile of the market. It's
But-
higher. It's a higher percentile for the lowest grades, and it gets
It's unclear.
it gets progressively
So, yeah.
different as you.
Well, it's
move.
very clear
other-
that fireman's just going to the grocery store. I can tell you that.
The other grades, we don't know what percentile they're at. Is that what we're saying?
We do, but you'd have to do the math across each
I
grade.
think it's,
We
it's
can
not
get to it.
it's not a one size fits all. That it's, we would,
I just want to
We
make sure
could
like
take
trying
an
to come up
higher
with
grades
is what's
aren't at
best.
like over 40% percentile or something,
Where would we fall right now if we implemented as recommended by the Evergreen study? Where would we be ranked among other municipalities if they haven't made any moves whatsoever? If it's static, if they haven't already been doing their own research about increasing salaries, and with what we have planned here or what's being suggested, where would we rank out of those 18 municipalities? Did we make any movement upward
In the lower tiers, very much so.
in the lower tier?
Lower tiers, I think we're at the 80th percentile.
Is that including adjustments that those municipalities might have made this year? Or is that based on last year's?
So I think the data was collected October, November, Janice.
Yeah.
I think it was late 2025. I think we got wind of change as recently as like this past month. Those aren't getting updated after we collected the data.
So we don't know like currently compared.
I think I'm only aware of one. I think Somerville has adjusted
So
since
you have
we
to
did
do
our
another
data.
study.
Yeah, that's my point. Is everybody else they're doing studies, they're
Yeah,
moving,
yeah,
and we don't know how much they're going to move, but I'll be honest with you. I think with the numbers we're looking at, we're not going to move at all. We're going to move. Yeah, we'll move down.
I'm just, yeah.
I think we're going to move down. I think we're going to be less competitive.
Well, I think the
As a result of
proposal
what
is
we're
though, is that it's a very simple question, I think, with a very complex answer. Because not only do you have to look at every job class, I mean, a battalion chief is different than a engineer, it's different paramedic. Every single job class is a different market study and a different rank. Different municipalities, it looked like, responded. Some had 5 and 6 responses, some had 12 responses. And so it's a very complex answer. And I think that in addition to the pay study that we talked about, I believe there's this incentive program that's going to add $225,000 of extra pay into the mix as well.
I think the incentive program is straightforward and great.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Well,
compliment our chiefs for coming up with that
Yeah.
and bringing in some real numbers and that looks good. That's
Yeah.
clear cut. Anybody can understand that. And I know it's capped that you're going to have so many and you've got to be able to use it. So, and there's some time that you have to have the training for certification. All of that's like future state, basically. But that's very clear. What's not clear to me, and I can almost bet you not clear to the average resident out here and our employees who we value the most, is exactly what they're going to get out of this that would move them into a competitive situation. I think we're kidding ourselves, basically. I think we've been less than transparent. I read all the stuff that came out. I read the op-ed that came out the other day. I learned more from the op-ed than I did anything else that I got.
Did you look at the solution file? that
I
was
looked at
sent?
solution file up and down and around and around. And it's like,
all there.
I know it's all
not.
there. It's all there, but I don't agree with all of it either. For example, how did we who made org charts changes? Was that made by the committee? Was that made by the city administrator? Was that made by the chiefs and the other department heads? How was all that done? How did we all of a sudden change grades on certain positions and, decide this is the way the org chart should work? Where was the collaboration on that? I don't know. I mean, I'm on council, but I wasn't on any of the committees.
Did org charts
I
change?
don't, so I think and I could be foggy, a lot of details running around, but I think the only organizational chart change was a correction. I think that our initial organization chart had an error in it. And I think we just corrected that.
Was that in the fire department?
The one I'm thinking of was in
City
general-
administration.
Yes, city administration.
Okay, general, so we moved it, but we moved short-term coordinator and business licensing representative moved up a grade.
Oh, yeah,
You're
that's
talking
not,
about grade changes,
yeah, that
not
was
org
not an
chart.
org.
Okay, all right, so, okay, I'm sorry, misspoke. But yeah, grade changes. So how was all that decided? I mean, it looks like those kind of things were done in a vacuum to me. And, and I get it, we tout, okay, we've got an entry salary level that's at the 80th percentile. But I tell you, these folks that work for us in this city, we only have one or two that live on this island. All the rest of them travel great distances. Their commutes are tremendous. And we need to walk a mile in their shoes too. And if we think that they're going to drive by 4 or 5 municipalities, continue to work here, and we're just going to throw them a few crumbs, it ain't going to happen. I'm telling you, we're going to find ourselves in a situation, I think, where we're no better off than we were before, and we might even lose ground because everybody else, every other municipality is dealing with the same kind of issues. I just don't see it.
It's certainly,
So were you, I'm just curious, you seemed quite, ready to approve the initial.
I see, I was at a town hall just like.
I was just asking a question. Rusty, can I?
Yeah,
finish
go
one
ahead.
second? So what I recall is when the initial Evergreen study came out, y'all wanted to just, go forward and approve it as it was. Am I mistaken on that?
I think you are mistaken on
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
I think you're totally mistaken on that. And I don't know where you even came up with that, quite honestly.
this is a nationwide issue for sure. But I mean, I think that we need to make sure that wages for every grade level are competitive and where they need to be, including with where other municipalities are at currently. Because if we go with the study, I mean, it's already dated basically. And we need to have some sort of system in place, like Chief Oliverius suggested. He said, for example, use the 90th percentile, and anytime 3 positions in one department were out of market by 10%, then it's required to go back to market and make an adjustment. And therefore, we're always in the 85 to 90% of the market. It takes politics out, it takes the emotion out. We're not having to continually wrestle with this. It's just an automatic trigger. I really feel like we need that in place. The incentives are great.
I think the incentives are great. I think the
We have to
tying
make sure
things
we're
to the
starting.
CPI index, the way it's recommended by the committee, I think that's a good idea so that we don't lose ground. We have that 1 to 4% adjustment we can do. Those kind of things are, I think that's good to have those in there. My challenge and my concern is that we're just not stepping up and rewarding our employees to the point that we're going to slow down turnover, increase retention, and we're going to have the hidden cost on the other end of keep losing employees. Then we're going to have the cost of recruitment and training, those hidden costs that we don't even factor in here, that lowers retention. And we're going to have the same cycle, the same revolving door that we've had before. It's just my concern.
Yeah.
And to me, I think we've got a lot of work before July the 1st to sharpen the pencil on this and figure out how we give them more and how we can pay for it, quite honestly. We had a town hall. It was resounding. People that spoke at that town hall were demanding that we look at this issue very seriously and make some major adjustments. I see signs all over the island, $25 an hour for firefighters. I don't know what the right number is. I don't know if 25 is even affordable, but I can tell you, what we're offering here with the dollars that we're suggesting is not anywhere close to making a major adjustment in their hourly pay. What would be the average pay for the average firefighter with this?
What is the,
With the 54?
54 for the
Yeah.
I've heard
fire
it's
and
like
60
18
60 for
something.
the police.
I've heard it's like $18 and something an hour, based on 2,900 hours.
That's an entry level, somebody just starting for their job and never, with no experience, which is, so I went back, looked at Bureau of Labor and Standards data. The state actually provides a lot of data on fire, police. There's the county municipal associations did a report 2 years ago. I looked at that compared to cost of living adjustments from that data to look where our people fall. We're way higher than anywhere else in the state. And this Charleston County in itself is higher than anywhere else in the state, except maybe Columbia. But we're in the upper range of what would be what I'm seeing in all that other data.
Did you look at the average cost of commute for employees in all those municipalities around the state? Did you look at that?
I consider that's part of this too, yes.
Yeah, you considered that, but you know, you're not a firefighter. And quite honestly, a firefighter has to have a lot of training before they get that $18 an hour, right? They don't just walk in here one day and say, I'm a firefighter.
Right, and that, I think when they readjusted what the admin committee put out and readjust me based on experience and from what data I've seen, I think we are pretty close. I agree with their data.
Well, I'm glad you do, David.
Well, I'm not supporting this, not unless we get
We need to make.
much better
I'm not
numbers.
Where are
supporting
we
either.
on this?
I don't
Where are
even
we-
think this is close if we're already on that
Not even
discussion.
So I think you said you needed a decision. I can certainly make the motion on it. We can start moving it forward. Would that be helpful?
yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Yes, because we need to
Yeah, we
move
need to
forward.
move on.
Something.
All right. So I move to implement a base pay market adjustment for the IOP first responders, general and administrative employees with the following parameters and pay ranges for each position as reflected in the most recently reviewed solution file, IOP 041326 with legacy employee updates for public safety. First, adjust fire starting pay to $54,000 and police starting pay to $60,000. These increases will flow through all the respective steps of both pay structures. The base pay budget increase for this adjustment will be $315,000. This budget includes existing public safety employee relevant work experience adjustments as well. Secondly, adjust the starting pay for general employee categories to $41,600 and adjust the starting pay for administrative employees to $82,700. These increases will flow through the respective grades for both pay structures. The base pay budget increase for this adjustment will be $176,000 using the discounted range penetration adjustment. Third, adjust the police chief pay to parity with the fire chief. Fourth, include 4 organizational job classification changes to increase the deputy police and fire chiefs, the short-term rental coordinator, business license representatives, and storm water facilities foreman positions to new grades.
Second. Or was that, yours was a
Yeah.
motion, right?
We have a motion and a second.
It was a long motion, but I'll give it to, yeah.
Any other comments?
Can we ask what the chiefs think of this? Like, do we think their employees are going to be happy?
I'm with you, but I wouldn't want to go there.
I wouldn't
I'm in the middle of
either.
that.
I feel like that would be more
I don't think we
appropriately
should
done.
put our
Yeah.
key employees on the spot.
I'm very disappointed in this, extremely.
Got to be a way to find out if we're going to just find ourselves in the same situation a year from now or two.
All right, if there's no, Bev has some comments.
Yeah, as I listened to this, so, this didn't happen overnight. And it's going to take more than a few steps, I think, to get to where I think you want to be, Jimmy, and you want to be, Rusty, which is at $25 an hour. I think at the end of the day, we look at 3 things. We look at management, we look at a culture, and we look at our pay structure. And what we're trying to fix right now is our pay structure. But I think what we need to do, this all needs to be balanced. We can't just focus on one of these, like pay, without the others to solve the problem. I think, I truly believe that each of us support all of our public safety, our firefighters. I think concentrating on the base pays is where we need to be, not on an hourly. I don't think we can do it on an hourly because it's not apples to apples. You can't compare the shift schedules that we have with somebody who works 40 hours a week, 2,080 hours. It's a different schedule. So I think what we have to use is the total pay. I like that these ranges were adjusted. That's good. There were grades that needed to be adjusted that weren't. I don't think this is the end of it, honestly, but I think this is a darn good step. And if we take the motion that's on the table now, we're good. We look at the incentives. I think we're all on board on that. Maybe not. We'll see how that goes. And I think that will go a long way to retention. We're not going to do this and then stop looking at it. This is continuous, and every single municipality is looking at this, as some of you have said. And, we'll be looking at it again. But I think this is a really darn first good step, all these proposals that came out, because we have to have a sustainable compensation plan. And, when you look at the percentage of our personnel costs, and I know y'all don't want to talk about, the benefits that come with this, because, you can't buy milk with benefits, but we have a really good pension plan here, a really good one. And there is a lot of factors that go into why somebody would leave. When I look at the turnover and the turnover rates, and that might be typical in fire departments. It might be. You can jump on me all over me if you want on that one. But when I look at those turnover rates, I think, some of those that left of the firemen, they were here less than 9 months. So there may have been other factors than pay. I don't think we really need to discuss that at all. I'm just saying there's more that goes into retention and a great place to work. I think Isle of Palms is a great place to work, but I'm looking at it from the outside right now. So I'm not I'm not a full-time employee. Haven't been in the trenches, but I would just love to send the message that we totally support our public safety. One of the most important things to me is our paramedics and advancing that program. I think when that was started, I think it was a good thing, and I think we need to focus on it and make a real good effort. And I think this is a good start towards that. And that's where those dollars may have been, I'll call it, redirected. And, to me, the chiefs get the lump of money, and they'll direct them to the right place. And that's where the chiefs can make those tough decisions. That's all I have.
Well, for the record, all the state pension plans are great around the state, all municipalities. So that's really apples to apples. And, the dollars that we're offering here, I still think fall far short of where they need to be on base pay, compensation. I'm in favor of the incentive plans and all the other things that were mentioned, but we are, I think, woefully falling short of what we offer in terms of living wages.
We have them, yeah, go ahead.
Is this for the incentives and the
No,
wages?
I got more.
No.
Those
we
are
got more
separate,
too.
right?
So-
Yeah, there's a few more
So,
components here.
I would just like to
So-
briefly say that I think that the admin committee did a great job of going back and putting a lot of time and a lot of energy and effort into this. And I appreciate what they've done. And I feel like a lot of people are looking to have something that could fit on a bumper sticker or a yard sign, and it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think they did a good job.
So the admin committee spent an awful lot of time on this, right? So what'd you say?
You should.
I said I appreciate the time that they put into it.
Okay.
Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
All right. Any other comment?
So the paramedic firefighter position, we've never had all positions filled at the same time. I mean, so is this going to help with that? Because I feel like that's really a huge part of our need for this community. I mean, we haven't, the second most calls that they receive is for medical response, injury, trauma, illness. I feel like we really need to prioritize and make sure that that position in particular is being compensated appropriately and very competitively at the highest level. I mean, I don't feel like we're making sure that we're attracting, the people that we need here. And I'm worried that the other communities are going to be ahead of us at the end of this, and we're still going to be behind. And do we have any plans to implement some kind of system to where this isn't an issue moving forward? I really think, I don't know who does that, but
Those recommendations were also made at the admin committee too. It's part of the 7-point plan.
to implement like a trigger, when salaries get adjusted.
We're talking about doing market studies more frequently than what we've been doing so that we're keeping, that's basic recruitment and retention 101. HR department would be out there looking at sample positions all the time, Ashley.
There can be more into, okay.
Yeah. We can do that internally, we can do it externally, but that's just basics. We haven't been doing the basics.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're going to be doing that moving forward.
All right, we have a motion second. All those in favor
Wait, what's the motion?
for the
Read
wage
the motion.
increase only?
It's about 3 pages long.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
This is for the,
components.
this is for the,
It's to take,
this is the motion to approve the suggested wages as presented.
$315,000 increase to public safety, 176
for general.
general admin. Plus fringes are on top of that, obviously, but that's the base piece of it.
The agenda says discussion and consideration of budget decisions needed from budget plan.
Yep.
1, wage and compensation.
That's what we're
So
talking
it
about
is
now.
wage and compensation.
Yeah.
That is wage and
Well,
compensation.
there's other elements to it that I think he's gonna, you're making separate motions to
For the different
all the
components.
different components of it. This is the first component of the wage and compensation study.
So we're voting on
Yeah.
the wage.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
You got that, Nicole? All right.
Okay.
The next, you got more
Yep,
to
next
your,
motion, I'd like to move to implement an incentive program for both the police and fire departments created by their leadership and to be implemented and monitored during the coming fiscal year. These plans will be fine-tuned by the Public Safety Committee and leadership. This will be an incremental pay program to the base pay adjustment, and the budget for the base pay increases associated with these incentive plans will be $150,000. Just a little add-on comment on that. We've got I think the police is pretty well locked down, and I think it's in great shape. I think there might be some additional work that might have to go back to the public safety organization for the fire just to kind of align them up. But what we're voting on would be the implementation of the incentive plans with a budget of $150,000.
Second.
any comments on those? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, third component, I move to increase job pay grades scales annually at the beginning of each fiscal year based on Bureau of Labor Statistics published and recognized CPI metric, CPI-U-South, and that metric be used also for budgeting increases in the annual budgeting process with maximum of 4% and minimum 1% limits starting with fiscal year 2028.
So just a point of order, the only things on the agenda are wage and comps, and I guess this is all
It's all
as
part
it
of it.
relates to the budget and what what we're plugging into the budget at this point.
It's
So
what's getting
wage,
us to the 315. Yeah.
so this is there a money?
Yeah, this would be the CPI piece of it that ties it so that it would increase whatever the CPI is, which would be this year's budget, I said.
And it kind of goes to Ashley's question about how
It's
to
not on
keep
the
it
agenda,
moving.
though.
It's not on the agenda. One,
Well,
one is wage and compensation study.
Yep.
2, public safety incentives.
This is all part of the wage
3,
and
millage
compensation study.
increase.
This is all part of the wage and compensation study.
Well,
It's
We already
multiple
voted on
items.
that.
So
So, but
Is
he
this
said
really-
it to be
Go ahead.
effective for FY '28, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to.
So,
make it. Yeah, we're
so
going to.
FY '27, we already have
Okay.
baked in 2.8 for the COLA and 3% for the merit.
Is there anything else then? I
Should
mean,
this be, actually, should this be 27?
is there anything else in there that pertains to the budget? Is that what we're
right,
asking?
that's correct.
Yeah, I think the recognition of the service, which was part of the 315, maybe we don't need to do.
Yeah,
that.
so that is.
This is all part of the wage and compensation study. I
Yeah.
don't know why we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are dollars that
Yeah.
are being
These are
plugged
dollars
into
that
the
are-
budget.
Separate
Just
motions.
keep going, Scott.
We don't put motions on the agenda. People make motions based on topics on the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So just because the motion's not on the agenda doesn't mean we can't make a motion.
Scott, do you mind repeating that last like little part? I just missed the
Sure,
number that
yeah.
you said.
I'll just read the thing. I move to increase job pace grades/scales annually at the beginning of each fiscal year based on a Bureau of Labor Statistics published and recognized CPI metric, CPI-U-South, and that metric be used also for budgeting increases in the annual budgeting process with a maximum of 4% and minimum 1% limits, starting with fiscal year 2028.
Is
So
there a
that doesn't
second?
affect this
Yeah.
budget.
All right. Any other comment on that?
I just want to make sure it does not affect this budget year because right
You
now
said
we have,
28.
okay. I just
Well, why are we voting on something that's not in this
Yeah.
budget?
You know,
Aren't we-
I had to type it. It should be
Yeah.
27.
It is
Yeah, it's
27.
Yeah, that's what I had in the first one.
So your motion is
So
But in the
27.
workshop, you changed it to 28.
What?
In the committee level, you changed it to
To
28.
28?
28, because we are adjusting
Future.
this 27 based on the Evergreen, which included.
Then let's leave it at
and
28.
that would,
We don't need to do
Yeah.
it twice.
I don't think we ought to be voting on this at all.
it's all
Well,
part of the
it's-
wage and
it's-
compensation
it's how
study.
we handle out your budget. Cost.
Yeah. So any comment on it?
Did anybody second that?
Yes, Katie
Katie
did.
did.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Next one, Scott.
Okay, for first responders, I move to recognize up to 1/2 of relevant work experience of new hires and to give discretion to place new hires and existing hires up to a maximum of midpoint within the step pay grade and scale. The $315,000 budget includes this adjustment and is reflected in the solution file.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay. Opposed?
Nay.
All right. You have any more? That's it? Okay. That covers items 1 and 2. The next item is millage increase. So what do you want to know, whether we include a millage increase into that's currently in there? or
Yeah.
What millage increase that we want
Yes.
to include?
So right now, we currently have 2.77 for operating.
Mhm.
And then we have 0.93 for, I think it's 0.93 for the fire truck.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
But-
not ready to vote on millage increases yet. I want to talk about some of the other cost stuff, but that's just me. I think we ought to defer that.
There. Well, maybe we should talk about the timing, which is jumping to item D probably, but the millage increases don't need to have any ordinance with them, or they do?
They do.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we
they
need
will
2
be part-
readings.
Yes, and they are part of the budget adoption ordinance.
And
So they have to be, they have, how much time does that? 2
So
months.
we were planning on, and we have a month, an additional month built in if it was needed, but we were planning first reading of the budget end of April, second reading of the budget end of May. Has to be approved by the end of June. So there is a month of time in there, but, and then it becomes effective, obviously, July.
And is something coming off this year? What, is there a millage that's dropping this year or is that next year? What's
One
the-
drop this year in January of 26.
It dropped in
It
our
dropped
current
off.
year. When is the next thing drop off? We had a schedule of
Like, I
all
know.
the dropping
Yeah.
off and on.
There's a debt service that's dropping off. Forget which one.
Is it one of the trucks?
I didn't,
Yeah.
Public safety in 28, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Do you remember when it drops?
Just the year, it's 2020, I think it's the public safety building.
In 28?
I think so.
okay. Thank you, Sean, because
Yeah, that's-
everything's
So-
running together at this point.
So there's a lot of moving pieces here. If we, is there a possibility to have a first reading that, to come to council meeting with what the changes in expense is going to be so we can understand how much revenue we need? And then everybody be prepared to make a decision at council meeting at the end of April on what revenue sources we need to do. And then have a first reading of the budget at the May, this meeting in May.
First reading, so delay first reading from April till May?
Yes.
Doesn't there have to be a
It-
time between what's
Yes.
the time between first and second reading?
Like a week.
Yeah, it's not a long time. It does have to be a public hearing. It has to be advertised a certain
But
number
then
of
we
days.
could still meet the end of May timeframe for the second reading.
When would you do first reading? I thought you
At
said.
this meeting in,
Oh, Ways
And
and
April.
Means.
at the Ways and,
I'm
at the
sorry.
Ways and
Oh,
Means meeting.
yes,
in
to
May.
your, yes, I think you could do that.
That's on an ordinance, you need first reading of an ordinance
Yes.
at a Ways and Means committee.
No, it's gotta be a full
Well, we
council.
could,
We'll have full
we could
council.
have a council meeting though tacked
A
on to
special
Ways
meeting.
and Meetings to have the first reading of the budget.
It's a good idea.
So is the,
We do have an April council meeting, right?
We do.
yes,
28.
but
But I think there's a lot of decisions that be made that we're probably not prepared to make tonight on terms of millage increases and what revenue sources we need. And to see the total impact on expenses so that we can match revenue to expenses would be helpful.
So that we're only making a millage increase to
Yeah.
what we
What we
need
need, right.
based on where
So
we
we'll
actually
come
are.
prepared to the April meeting that we'll get that in advance, understand it. And everybody should be prepared at the April council meeting to make a decision on these revenue sources.
in April. So could,
April, in the end of April.
so could we leave the budget like we have it now with both revenue streams in it for first reading? At first reading, you tell us either take one out, do a hybrid of the two, and you actually give it first reading and amend it, or you give us direction at April, but give it first reading. We would then have a public hearing, have second reading, and it would be approved as amended. To
guess you could
avoid
do-
leading,
I guess you could-
losing them.
I guess you could do that as well.
Well, the only thing we started talking about the budget. One of the things we didn't really talk about is the expense trend, the expense side of it. And that's going to kind of go to what are we going to need or what aren't we going to need? And if you look at the budget, just going in from 27, 28, 29, we've got all of the, it looks like most of the expense categories are increasing at a rate of 1%, which I think is helping to keep our fund balances growing the way they're growing. But, for example, if we're not going to fund the growings with a millage, we've got to, I would like to see all of our expenses grow at a minimum of the CPI, we're 2.5%. And then if you look at health benefits and things of that nature growing potentially at 1% or 2% or 3%, looking at history, I think we're understating our expenses going out. And I think that could have a fairly significant impact on what revenues do we need in the future. So I'd like to see those expenses adjusted. I talked to Deborah earlier today about it, and maybe we can work with that while she's out. But, I think the expenses and the fringes need to be really looked at as far as the growth rate so that we can validate that those are reasonable. And I don't know that we're gonna be able to have that.
Given that, do it back to your plan of we do first reading. We talk about it in April. You give us direction in April as best you can, and then first reading at either your Ways and Means meeting or a special meeting immediately before or after, and then second reading and public hearing at the end of April.
Second reading at the end of April?
Yes.
Second-
I'm sorry, end of
May.
May. I'm sorry, end of May. End of May.
So we've,
Ways and Means.
yeah, just so, you're probably not interested, but we have had first reading in May in past years.
We could do
We
it
could
that
do
way.
that. I mean,
It potentially puts second reading like 3 days before needing to have a round.
Right, but we don't want to rush on these critical issues.
On the funding source, I'm of the same opinion. I think we need a little time to consider whether it's a hybrid millage fee rate,
yeah,
raising fees.
we've got a lot of choices. We
Got
just
a lot
need
of
to decide
choices.
how
Isn't that
to-
what we're
If
discussing
voting on
tonight
each one
then?
of those separately tonight.
Well, that's what I was wondering, how I kind of was looking at it is you gave, you put in two maximum options. Again, and I'm not seeing that we necessarily have to implement those full amounts. I'm kind of leaning more towards, again, a smaller version of both of them. But then we also threw in the local option sales tax decrease, which, again, I'm not sure why we wouldn't look at that one also.
I think
Well,
maybe what we're kind of all getting at is that the millage question should be the last. Like, let's try to answer all the other questions. And then it's kind of like the millage would be what would fill in the gap of if there is a gap.
See what the
That's
findings-
that's how I'm looking at it.
Well, and again, I was the 15% business license. I wasn't sure. I thought that was right either. I think there is some adjustment to it, but that's a whole discussion in itself.
So back to the timing.
So it sounds like everybody would like more time. So would
One more draft and then I think we
First
look at it
reading.
and-
But
we discuss it again at Ways and Means in May? First reading, end of May. Second reading,
Well, I would
End
suggest
of
we
June.
talk again at the council meeting at the end of April. That's 2 weeks from now.
yep.
And then have the first reading at and we can make decisions at the Ways and Means in middle of May. Have first reading at the middle of May, be at a special council meeting, and either have second reading at the end of May, which is 2 weeks later, or
Or push it till
push it
June.
in
Depending
June.
where we are.
Okay.
At least start down the path of this as having a first reading at the end, in middle of May.
Middle of May.
so let me ask this. For this changes to this draft 3.
Mhm.
We just want to increase the total expenses, well, payroll was already increased by like 5%. So we want to increase the operating expenses by an additional 1.5% across the board. Is that what? Or what?
Oh.
Um,
I did see that in there that the increases are 1%. And we're putting 2.8 for wages, right? So if we think inflation is going to be higher than 1% in there for any materials or anything that we're going to purchase. So we can't have two standards, one for wages and one for everything else, right? So we should put the same kind of increase in cost going across the board, I think.
right. So that's all we want to see. Draft
And then
is-
there's special options in there that I'd leave it to you to decide whether that, like fringe benefits have increased 11% over the last 4 years, but we have 5% in there. Is that enough? I don't know. I draw on your expertise to decide that. Same with insurance, right? Insurance has gone up more than inflation. And do we have enough in there for that? But after you get done doing all that, then we can look at expenses and then decide on how revenue fits in.
And do we want to see, do we want to see those drawings assumption updated where it's not a millage increase? Or is that something that around the table would, or
I mean, I don't mind seeing that the way it is, just because I feel like it's not a decision that's even been made. It's a maybe. And so I feel like having it as this is a maybe,
You're right,
maybe
yep.
solution. So this is a maybe payment. That doesn't bother me as much because it's a little more nebulous. I mean, that's just kind of my gut feeling on that.
But to get to that point, is there anything anybody else has that they'd like to see incorporated into the plan before we take a final look at the expense side?
As far as the timing goes, if you want to know what I would like to see happen as far as the timing goes, have first reading in May, first reading in June. Give people 30 days so we don't get accused of pushing it through when nobody knew anything about it. We can get in trouble.
You
May
said first-
council,
First reading mid-May and second reading mid-June? Is that what you
I
said?
said no, I said May
full
and I said
council.
June.
I think
That's fine.
Jimmy's
Yeah.
saying full
I mean, that's,
council.
I'm fine with doing that. It's not you, that's enough time for you to react to it. I know it's done in past years too.
Yeah.
That gives us maximum amount of time to sort through all this, but
It's
a big
important to
decision.
give a lot of, give the public a lot of time, give them as much as possible.
We would just, we put an additional month in there for that reason.
Correct.
But you're chewing through that cushion of time. So that puts council, you're back up against the wall a little bit at the end of June because we have a new fiscal year beginning 5 days later.
You're right, Douglas, but I think this year is probably a little different than some that I remember in the past.
Yeah,
There's a lot on the table.
Yeah,
this
it would
year.
just be a commitment to being kind of aligned when it comes time at the end of June to be ready to have a
Well, by
budget.
law, we have to,
Yeah.
so we will.
so is that what everybody wants to see, that time frame? And we'll shoot towards that.
sure.
I'm good with that.
And if we can
Okay.
can pull it in earlier, we can pull it in earlier.
All right. And you have what you need to get the next draft now?
I think there's still a few questions.
I
Well,
don't
a handful,
know.
yeah, we do
So-
have, and they're really small.
Yeah.
These last ones, almost no,
Well-
if any, budget increase.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me make sure I understand. So we're gonna go back through expenses and make sure that we are increasing expenses based on CPI as well as what has happened in the past. Which we try to do that with some of the larger expenses. We've tried to do that already. And then we are going to leave the current millage in. We're going to leave the current increases in for business licenses. And then once you see all the expenses in, then you'll determine which revenue source you want to scale back on. Am I including the loss addition of the 377? Do you want to see that baked in revenue?
Oh, the local.
Local
options.
options,
yeah.
I would just keep it out now.
Okay.
We know what the different revenue sources are and we can make a decision
Okay.
without that.
Did you
Yeah.
say you were making the business license change or
It's in
just-
there.
It's in
It's
there
already.
don't we need to vote on that though?
You will, if, to actually adjust the business licenses will take its own ordinance. And you will need to do that, but for the time plan,
Yeah, it's just
Time,
in
it's
there.
just a plan.
It's
You
not,
might
it's
have
not
it
final. It's just in there we know it's in there, but we
Send
can
us a
pull it out.
copy of what you used to make those adjustments in the license fees.
In the license fees?
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a little schedule in your packet.
And did we do parking and permits?
No, we haven't got to that yet.
Yeah.
So,
No. No, but is it in the, I can't remember parking permits were in the budget.
Yeah, it's all in the same.
yes,
it's all
up
part of one.
15%.
so are we good with timing? Good? You good with what you need?
Yes.
All right, though, 2 items under this marina parking lot.
I would say we just keep that in the budget the way it is
Okay.
and just
Mhm.
for the budget's sake.
Which is in
Right
the-
now, it's in there as a city project at $500,000. And we are continuing to take the overage payments from the marina. There was a plan and an idea to
Okay.
have the marina tenants handle the
like it.
project.
Yeah.
It's in theory a net zero change to the budget, but it's in there as we are paying for it and we're continuing to take the revenue.
Okay, so we're going to
Just
leave
to-
it in the
For the
budget
sake
like
of
that, right?
simplicity,
Yeah.
just leave it the way that it is. 'Cause I
Okay.
think we have enough
So we're getting away
other
from.
things
we're-
to change.
we're
I
getting away-
mean,
Go ahead.
I think the committee's recommendation is still to change it so that we would have, we would stop the overages and the marina or the restaurant would take on the risk and the cost and the planning of it and everything else. But I feel like just for the sake of the budgeting and simplicity is to leave it the way that it is, because it won't make much of it. It won't make a difference to the city, to the budget, how it actually gets paid.
The agreement we thought we had came back different than, came back to the way it
So-
originally was.
So we'll leave that in the budget.
All right.
Leave
Yeah,
that-
I'm glad it's out. I'm totally against bartering, especially with public funds.
Okay.
Totally against it.
Then the next item on here is marina bulkhead recoding. I think you're going to find out what the status of the current.
Yes. And we now have indications that it can come out of the budget. We have ATM doing an inspection this week to verify it, but according to their records, Sean, what was the date? It was about 5 years?
2021.
21, it was like
recoded.
a 10-year product?
Yep.
So we think that it's okay until 31, but they're going to go back out, super low tide, verify that there's not anything that we should account for. But and I would just say, if you are comfortable, we should have that report back from ATM this week. If they tell us, yes, it's good to go, we will plan to pull that 450, I think, out of the
450.
budget.
I was-
Transfers.
Well, that's, yeah, that was, I brought up last time, the transfers into the Marina Fund from, it was from Matex, which I think was to either one originally to do the dredging, or it possibly could have been for this. But there was a bump up in those transfers in 27, which I'm still not sure why.
Yeah, we were going to pull the transfers out.
Yeah.
I don't think it changes, it just moves the money.
Keeps it to a different fund.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if the marina fund is generating cash, we shouldn't be,
Right.
I don't think we should be transferring,
I think-
showing transfers in the out years on that.
I thought we said that, I got the impression that we wanted to leave some there for major repairs because,
Well, I think we do that, but
Is it because of this 450 that we're pulling out?
there's 450 that we are, no,
Well,
we didn't transfer the 450. You said 2027?
no, I lost it.
Because 2027 just includes the debt service and then the 500,000 for, so there's 75,000 for repair, for just general repairs and maintenance. There's 250 for the debt service, and then there's 500 for the parking and green space. That's what 2027 is.
I think if you back out the depreciation plus the debt payment is about a wash. So you got a cash, non-cash on your net in there. And I think what we're showing is that the marina fund has become, with the new leases and everything and the overages, I think it's become self-sufficient. So the question then becomes, since it's an enterprise fund, should we, I don't know that we need to keep, I don't know why we would put municipal funds in the enterprise fund if it's self-sufficient. And then what happens is in a few years, that debt drops off completely. And it's going to generate a lot more cash, which will hopefully act as much like a sinking fund for the any future dock repairs that we have. But I don't, I would request that maybe we not be transferring funds continuing into the marina fund if we don't need it, if it's solvent and generating cash.
So
It should be, usually enterprise funds are the other way. They're sending funds, not receiving funds.
So take the debt, you want me to take the debt service out of there?
No, but
Don't-
No,
Go ahead.
I
The
think that
75,000?
the 75, you've been doing that all along. But in 27, you go from 75,000 to 325. So another 250,000 on that line. And then the line below it, you're going from 250 to 500.
Right, because the debt service should have been there the whole time. The 250 should be there the whole time. And then the rest of it is the 500 and the 775. So that debt service has to be showing somewhere else because these sheets have that from the old format, it didn't show. I don't think it showed here. So we need to figure out how that was shown previously. Probably in from the state. It's probably in that 250, 296, and
You have something
250 from,
specific you want.
from
Yeah, no, all,
the transfer.
yeah, all I'm saying
I
is,
can get with you
Yeah.
after
Okay.
tomorrow,
Yeah, make sure you
I won't-
understand it.
I won't be here tomorrow, but
when you get back.
I'll be back on the 26th. So yes, we can talk then.
The other thing I kind of saw when I was going through that one was on the forecast for base rent, you have a 1% annual increase. And that's it's on page 36, or I'm looking at page 36. But again, I'm not sure if I had the right one, but the restaurant lease has a 2% a year increase. And the marina was based on CPI. So I was questioning why you wouldn't use those values since it's in a lease agreement and when it's a fixed. And again, I'm not sure I was looking at the right lease, but to verify that.
Right, we can definitely update that. That's probably just based on the schedule that was in there, but we definitely update this based on the lease.
All right. You have anything else, Dave, on that fund?
No, that was it.
Under item 8 procurement, there's a report of purchase between 10 and 25,000 in emergencies on page 154 of the packet. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, there's no real comments about that, other than we have been continuing to find termites. We think we're at the end of termites in City Hall. So we're kind of in the put it back together mode, and we should be getting through those emergency type payments being paid to beach construction. The rest of those are budgeted.
Do we have,
and
sorry, do we have a bond? Term-
we do not.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
Yep.
Interrupted.
Item B is report of brick installations for
Yeah.
2 crosswalks on Palm Boulevard.
That is on the agenda as a report. That is actually, this purchase is not in the budget. So we need consideration to do that since it's on the, as a report, and we need consideration. We'll put that on your council. But that is the 2 crosswalks. We've been talking about that in public safety. We did have money in our budget, but these 2 were not in that budget. So this is
So the question,
outside of
yeah,
budget.
the question is whether we do it outside the budget now or we put it in the
That's
budget and
correct.
do it in June or July or something.
Correct.
So we
They
can do that.
repainted them, but they didn't
Yeah.
stamp them.
Right.
That's correct. This
That's the
is just
stamping.
the stamping.
Can I ask just a random question on that?
Yeah.
Why 41st and 43rd? Is that,
Oh, yes,
is there
they're
like a,
I think they were already, and this
is that
is my
because they were already
recollection.
there?
Robert, they were already there. Those property owners contacted the DOT, and I think the DOT kind of got them half the way there. And I think because they were doing them halfway nice, I think we
White stripes.
yeah.
Okay.
But those 2 were not chosen for any special reason other than the residents had
of complaints.
contacted us about
And
it.
these are in FY26 budget. Does not say that. We did budget for crosswalks in 26.
But they're different crosswalks that we've already done,
Oh, not the,
not these 2.
okay.
Yeah, we've already used that money for other crosswalks, so these will be in addition.
Oh, okay.
So you put it on the agenda. for-
So I will put it for you to consider at the council.
Yes, the same crosswalks. It's just that you're going to improve them and make them
That's
like all
correct.
the others.
That's correct.
They function now. It's just aesthetically, they're going to stamp them and make them pretty. They
That's
look
correct.
different.
That's correct.
Item C is report of ATM changes.
So this one is also consideration. It's on there as report.
Yeah.
This is, we do need, and there are actually 2 different items on there. The first one is ATM's additional work to do the kind of analysis between the alternatives of using different sites. So that has basically been spent. But we're not outside of scope until after the product was done. So that 10,000 needs to be considered. The other one is an option, really. Bathymetric survey that all of this work has been predicated on, I think was 2022.
Yes.
Yep. So it's 4 years old at this point. We now have the permits. They are recommending that we consider updating those bathymetric surveys to see if we want to go at it any differently just before we go out to bid. We're getting this project ready to go out to bid. ATM is under contract and we have an agreement in place with them to handle the bidding, the construction administration, but this would be outside of that scope. So that will at your council meeting.
Okay. Next item are capital. Douglas, I guess in this one, if you.
You want me to go quick? Or you want,
Just, yeah, real quick, only anything that you feel like really
Needs money?
to be reported upon.
needs money.
Yeah,
So
I don't even know if this needs to be on the agenda.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
We already discussed it earlier.
So,
Yeah, okay. So
Just goes to facilities.
one potential money update I will give you is we had a meeting just this morning, and there has been a dangling issue of a change order that the Bastion Group and Thomas and Hutton are haggling over right now. It was proposed at just under a $40,000 change order. Thomas and Hutton is not satisfied with it, so they're going back and forth a little bit. I do expect that at some point, some amount is going to be forwarded to council, but we still don't have that. So I think there's a upcoming change order to be considered on that project. The rest of those, I mean, we talked a little bit about the green space, so I think we have direction on that, and the rest are just in flight and in motion and underway.
Okay.
Yep.
Under old business, first item is update on beach renourishment easements.
Do we want that?
That probably
okay.
doesn't need to be here
Okay.
either.
That is ongoing.
Yeah.
I think we're a third of the way there, and the deadline is the 22nd. So we're in flight there.
Douglas, just go. That's all we need.
Getting close.
And then update on the MOU and escrow agreement.
Yeah, that one, I also think we're close. Quick update. There were some edits that went back to the Wild Dunes Community Association. They have pretty well accepted all of those. So I think we're very close to having that where both parties are happy.
And then the last item under old business is the discussion of consideration expansion of Carter Shuttle. Do you want us to make a decision here tonight on that?
I think we have plugged in. I think we have assumed that the city is willing to go to the additional day of service. I think that had the effect, split it with CARTA, Town of Mount Pleasant, and ourselves.
We're
think it
waiting
went
on
from-
some other,
Some data.
was a question.
There was a question about projections and I told the Carter board that it was a projection question. And they just kind of laughed and they're like, what, how could we possibly know? I think maybe one barometer is the traffic on the past 2 Fridays on the island. It seems to be increased over the last few years.
Well,
And so maybe that would have some effect. But the Carter official response was they really didn't have a way to give you an accurate projection. They have delivered the numbers for the past 5 years. The
Yeah.
actual ridership is going up every year.
Yeah, that's and it's deep in the past. Page 181. They've given us the ridership over the last.
They've
5 years.
emailed me twice this meeting wanting to know what our decision was because we have a Carter board meeting tomorrow at 1 at the car.
Is there going to be any conversation? I mean, I look at those numbers and I think it's a wonderful thing that we're providing that service, but those numbers are just, I think for the amount of service and the amount of resources being poured on it, the numbers are quite, in my opinion, anemic. When you look at the ridership, we've got 823 riders, I think, last year, for the whole season, but you got to understand that they count as each way. So, a round trip, I've ridden, I love the bus. I've ridden the bus, but it counts me over and it counts me back. So, if you take the 823 and divide by 2, you're basically 410 riders if you assume round trippers over a 4+ month period. And, we're expanding the service that is that lightly used. Again, wonderful service, wonderful people operating it. It's a great opportunity, but if you're familiar with other shuttle services, the timing is tough because of traffic. They can't get over here hour on the hour because of the traffic, and that's totally understandable. But is CARTA going to maybe look at other alternatives of either reducing maybe the size of the bus and increasing the frequency, or doing other things? I mean, that might increase costs, but I think, the people I talk to at the stop, it's about convenience and reliability and being able to maybe figure out a way to make this actually a very viable service. Because right now, I mean, just being objective, I don't know that it's a real viable option for, any kind of volume of people. I don't know how they're going to get the volume up, I guess.
Okay, number one, it's not 4 months. It's the last weekend in May,
3 months.
the first weekend in September, and then June, July, and August. Number two, a lot of it has to do with the weather. It's just in the past, it's been Saturday and Sunday. If you have a bluebird day, then the ridership is up. If it's raining, then the ridership is down. And as for your question about what is CARTA going to do a more in-depth, complete analysis and how to improve ridership, that's their business. That's what they do all over the Tri-County area. That it's what they're trying to do. We have a ridership report every month. We have it tomorrow on all the routes, every single one, and this one will be included. But they're the professionals at this, and I'm certainly not. I'm just a representative for Isle of Palm.
Yeah.
But I have to give them an answer. They've texted me twice tonight during this meeting, wanting to know what Isle of Palm's council was going to recommend. So I'd appreciate it if we could get a decision this evening.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'd like a motion that we consider the expansion of the CARTA service to include Fridays for the
Second.
coming season.
Second.
Any other comments by anybody?
Who seconded that?
I do.
Bev has a comment up here.
Yeah, I'm having a real problem with it. I'm not gonna lie. So I look at the ridership and I look at it over the last 5 years. And yes, percentage wise, it looks like it's going up and up. But when you look at the raw data, and we've gone from 400 riders roughly to 820, whatever it was. I'm not looking, I don't have it in front of me. Why we would agree to add another day with those numbers is frightening to me. The cost to do this has risen exponentially, it seems. And I just think we would be trying to fix the problem, but it's not going to fix the problem, because at the end of the day, I really think that people like their cars. I'm concerned about the schedule because of the amount of traffic. It can't keep a schedule. 2 of those riderships are Scott Pierce on there. He's not coming to the beach. So the problem they're trying to solve is to get more people to the beach. Is that right? Jimmy, can you help me with that?
No, that is not correct. That is not right at all. My goal is to reduce vehicle traffic on the beach, especially on the weekends in the summer.
Okay, so we're reducing that traffic then. But if we have 800 riders, maybe 350 cars. So I'm not suggesting at this point to do away with it. I'm not saying that I don't want people coming to the beach. I just don't think that the numbers that they have now warrant an extra day.
Is
Now,
that what
maybe
we're-
if Mount Pleasant wants another day, they can pick up that. But I'm not in favor of it.
Well,
Any,
if you're not enthusiastic about it, I'm sure they'll back right off.
Has Mount Pleasant already approved it, Jimmy?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got to call into Daniel Brownstein.
I just have a question for Jimmy. We're not talking about doing away with the bus. We're talking about the additional day. Is that correct?
Extra day.
that's the motion you have is just for the additional day.
It says discussion and consideration of expansion
Okay.
of Carter shuttle
Yeah.
services.
And the
And the-
cost is split 3 ways.
Three ways.
Correct? So we're looking
Carter,
at like,
Mount Pleasant, and us.
It's 8,000
50.
apiece.
Additional 8.
It's
well,
not
if we
8,000
operate on
apiece.
Fridays, it's more than that, right? It's like more like,
It's an additional
Additional.
8,300 based on what the city is currently contributing.
I mean,
Any other comments?
I was gonna say, I keep hoping that this, will take off, and we've been trying it for years, but again, maybe seeing what happens on a Friday when there's maybe less traffic, so more people would be willing to try to take a bus. But again, based on the $8,000 to find out, and again, Jim, I'm assuming that, if we got in July and there's no riders on the bus on Friday, Carter would probably just cancel it anyway.
It would have to be, the three parties involved would have to agree.
Yeah. But if they're running an empty bus on Fridays, they
we're
notice
not gonna run.
it through the summer. I hope somebody's bringing it to our attention.
Well, we get a report every month. I go up there every month. It just so happens that the meeting is usually the day after, it's early this month, it's tomorrow. Usually it's the day after our council meeting.
So this is really an experiment, Jimmy, to see
Yeah.
if Friday will increase the ridership.
Right. As I said, the only barometer that I can put a finger on is if we all experienced the traffic on the island the past 2 Fridays.
I mean, I think
And
it's
it was
worth,
quite heavy.
I think it's worth trying for 1 year. Can always, discuss next year. And I'm sure Jimmy emphasizes at the meetings that,
The whole
I think
concept is year to year.
advertisement is what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
really need to work on. I mean, because I just don't really see much about it, but I don't watch the news either. So locally, mostly anyway. But it's worth it for 1 year for me.
All right. So let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Great. Thank you.
So we are into the, we already covered 11. Taking legislative reports off this agenda. It shouldn't be on the Ways and Means. So no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Y'all wish Deborah well. She'll be halfway